Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and we are live today, First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds take on the good guys, the Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Braves, though the Braves stink right now. So maybe there's a lot of guys on Gwinnett here that they need to put out there. So tonight, again, Throwback Thursday, first pitch, 6:35, tons of seats available here. The chairman of the board, David Reed, is with us today. Hello, David Reed.
Good afternoon, Jared. How are things out there? Looks like
They
a lovely
are
day for
wonderful.
baseball.
It's a beautiful day for baseball. I saw some guys, and I promise you I'm not hating. I'm not hating with what I'm about to say.
But
I saw some guys, but I saw some guys that were kind of stationed outside of the side entrance here at First Horizon Park. And that's where the visiting team, comes and goes. The bus drops them off right there in front of that side entrance. And they had kind of those card books, where they get all the baseball cards of all the visiting players. And then when they're coming into the stadium or leaving the stadium, they sign all the cards or whatever. And I'm sure these guys sell them. They probably collect some of them. They probably sell some of them. And I was just thinking something that I wasn't necessarily going to ask on the air, but I guess I've gotten into it. So, David Reed, I'm going to ask you this. Do you think that those guys make money doing that? Like, make a lot of money?
No,
but they're there in the middle of the day. And, I don't know, they might be bartenders. So, their jobs don't start until, 7 o'clock at night or whatever. But it's like in the middle of the day, just standing out there, waiting for AAA baseball players to come in and sign their cards. I mean, if you didn't make money off of it, you wouldn't do it, right?
But it's like playing the lottery because you're betting that one of those guys in AAA right now is going to go up there and be the next Dansby Swanson or whoever. So you're betting that you got their AAA card, you got their rookie card, you have their college cards now. And you're betting that you get their autograph and they're going to go up there and be the next Acuna, and you're going to be able to sell that for maybe $150.
Yeah, but if you get 10 Acuna cards signed over a 4-day, 6-day period, or even more Acuna cards than that, and he does become Acuna, then you make a ton of money, right?
Yeah, but also if any of these people are over the age of 13, it's a little creepy to me.
Oh, these guys were in their mid-30s and 40s.
Yeah, creepy.
That's what I'm saying, but you can't do it in the middle of the day unless you're making money off of it.
At least
I don't think you can. Anywho, that's not how I expected to start our show, but that's just something that I've been thinking about. I do want to start on Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final last night. I am not going to lie to you. I made it to overtime. Once it got to overtime, I'm now old, folks. That was it for me. Good night. I'll catch the highlight of what happened tomorrow. It was a fun game. These two teams are good. And I said yesterday, I think Florida in 6. I think we're going to have a 6 or 7 game series. But last night's Game 1 of the Cup Final was the first time in a long time that I actually felt good about the Nashville Predators. And you're going to think to yourself, wait a minute, what? What does last night's game have anything to do with the Predators? How could you feel good about the Predators? We heard Reed in the update before the show said that Matthias Ekholm and Victor Arvidsson scored. How could you be happy with the Predators after watching a game that had nothing to do with them? And I'm going to tell you why. Because last night when I watched that game, I thought, holy crap, the Predators are so far away from these two teams. And I say that remembering how much fun it was when the Predators were one of those teams. But the way to get back is to be where the Predators are right now. I don't get as caught up in what happened last year, which was truly a disaster. I don't get caught up in that as much as I think everybody else does, because I believe that what happens later this month in the NHL draft is going to be what determines whether or not the Predators can build a contender. Let's face it. The Edmonton Oilers are in the Stanley Cup Final for one reason. Because they drafted Connor McDavid first overall, and they drafted Leon Draisaitl third overall. The Florida Panthers are in the Stanley Cup final because they drafted Alexander Barkov, 2nd overall, and Aaron Ekblad, 1st overall. And then once their team was starting to come of age, and it takes time, it wasn't like McDavid got drafted and the next year they were in the Cup final. McDavid was drafted a decade ago. But after they drafted those guys and they had built their team up, Matthew Tkachuk had said, I'm not re-signing in Calgary. I want to go somewhere. And he, a high draft choice who was 6th overall, decided, I want to go to that team. Why? Because they were good with Barkov and Ekblad, and there's no state income tax, which is something that you have. Those guys have been in the league at that point for like 8 years. And so while everyone gets mad about what happened last year, about the team and how we had high expectations and they stunk and now it's awful, it's this, it's that, it's one way or another, the future of the Predators, the ability to be in Edmonton or the ability to be a Florida, all lies with whom they draft. It's not going to be what happens with Steven Stamkos or Roman Josi or Philip Forsberg. It's going to be who they decide to pick at the end of the month and if that guy becomes a superstar or not. That's what matters. And that's why, again, I feel like this edict that the fans have in the morning show and everything else, they say, well, Barry Trotz has to win next season or else. And I'm like, Barry Trotz told the fans when he took the job that he was going to rebuild the team. He took the job and he said, be patient. And I was excited when he took the job and he told the fans, be patient. Because for years after they got knocked out of the bubble in 2020, in 2021 and 2022, I had been begging to blow the team up. Blow it up. They got swept by Colorado in the first round of the playoffs. Blow it up. And everyone looked at me and said, no. Anything can happen when you make it to the playoffs, Jared. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. Really? Anything can happen? Because in the Eastern Conference, one team has represented that conference 3 years in a row. And in the Western Conference, and there are some great teams in the Western Conference, Dallas and Colorado. There's one team over the last 2 years that has represented the Western Conference. So when I was begging them years ago to blow it up, I was saying, hey, you got to get. Adam Vingan wrote a story about this in The Athletic when he used to work there. In order to get better, the Predators must allow themselves to get worse. So then Barry Trotz takes the job. They overachieve by making the playoffs, and they lost in round 1. And now all of a sudden, everyone expects this team to be a cup contender. Again, I was hopeful. That's what I thought when they signed those guys to free agent contracts, that they'd have a shot. But it's not realistic to be upset with where they are today. Because here's the other alternative. The other alternative is the Predators get off to a lousy start, or the Predators are a solid team, but they either barely miss the playoffs or they barely make the playoffs. But you're not competing against Edmonton if you do that. And in all seriousness, was a team last year with Saros in goal, with Josi and Forsberg, is that team ever going to compete with the Edmontons of the world? And the answer is no. So you have to go get your players. I kept begging the Predators, blow the team up instead of running out that Scarbini crew of Duchesne and Johansson, and give me a break. So if you want to be the Edmontons or the Floridas, you have to do what Edmonton and Florida had to do. And that was be bad. Draft a stud or two and then get better with those studs. And this is the first time since I've been on the radio, because I've been on the radio here for 10 years. And this is the first time they've been able to go draft a stud. Now, does that mean that these guys are going to be as good as McDavid or Barkov or Ekblad or Draisaitl? Probably not. But people thought Seth Jones was the best player in the draft that produced Alexander Barkov. And Alexander Barkov is basically your perennial Selke winner. So if you want to be like Edmonton and Florida, you got to be picking at the top of the draft. And guess what? Granted, you're not picking 1 or 2 because of the Fakakta lottery that screwed the Predators, which I knew was going to screw them. But you're still picking high in this year's draft. This is what you have to do. So in hindsight, I watched the game yesterday and I see they won the game because Leon Draisaitl is a bad boy. And this year, unlike last year, he's healthy. Well, you're not going to beat Leon Draisaitl by getting players in free agency. You're going to get them by drafting players. So give me a break. Now, I argued they needed to change the coach because I do think they have an NHL product right now, and this coach, in my opinion, not getting through the players. But where they are, at the end of the day, it's either be really good or be really bad. And this year, they were really bad. 615-737-1025. That is how I am starting the program today. 615-737-1025. There are a lot of people last night that were like, oh my God, I had to watch Victor Arvidsson and Matthias Ekholm score. And I have a thought on that. We want to get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller takes great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Have you ever called a plumber or electrician or HVAC tech and felt like they were trying to sell you something that you absolutely do not need? If a deal sounds too good to be true, like a $99 club membership or a $29 tune-up, that's because it is. The reality is those people have to find something to fix so they can cover the cost for the discounted club memberships. Unlike the other guys, Hiller never offers deals designed to trick you or sell you something that you do not need. That's why you hear me talking about my friends at Hiller all the time, because I use them at my home and I trust them to do just that. So schedule online like I do, like visiting happyhiller.com. That's happyhiller.com. Stillman and Company live at First Horizon Park. Breaking news, this from Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network. Aaron Rodgers, a one-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He will fly on Friday, so that is tomorrow. He will fly to Pittsburgh, and he will sign a one-year deal. I believe Pelissero says Rodgers had told the Steelers that it was going to be $20 million. So Aaron Rodgers will play for $20 million. He will sign tomorrow, according to NFL Network, and then he will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And then after that, who knows what the Steelers end up doing, but he'll make $20 million for doing it, and he'll be on the field next week at the team's mandatory minicamp. Okay, number one thought on this. I don't have a lot, and then I'll get back to the hockey. Number one, this has to be like the world's worst kept secret. It was obvious that the Steelers were going to sign Rodgers. Rodgers had hinted at it publicly. The Steelers had talked about it publicly. There was nobody else the Steelers were interested in. They told Russell Wilson, thanks, but no thanks. Aaron Rodgers told the Giants, thanks, but no thanks. And then he wanted to continue to play. So while this does bring a finality to, oh, thank goodness it's done, and Aaron Rodgers is the Steelers quarterback, we all knew even before the draft that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the Steelers quarterback. So that is not that big of a deal to me. The second thing on the Aaron Rodgers front is, and I really haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, but I do think it's worth discussing. Does this make the Steelers a contender at all? No. I mean, Aaron was much better than I think the Jets gave him credit for last year. But again, contender? No. Aaron's not what he used to be, and the Steelers, quite frankly, aren't what they used to be. This feels like a guy, they'll sign Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers will get the Steelers above 500. So Mike Tomlin is above 500 for the 20th year in a row, which is a very good stat. I'm not knocking it. But again, contending, I just don't, I'm sorry, I don't see it for the Steelers. But again, it's not like this is some sort of big news item to discuss, because I feel like we kind of all knew that Aaron Rodgers was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Now it is official that Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler. He will sign tomorrow. And again, he'll be on the field for the mandatory minicamp. And it kind of sounds, the other thing too, what took so freaking long? Aaron. But we all know Aaron's a drama king, so it is what it is. So that's just kind of how Aaron is. So I do have another thought on the hockey. Last night, Victor Arvidsson scored for Edmonton. Matthias Ekholm scored for Edmonton. And when I got on Twitter during the game last night, I saw all these Preds fans were like, oh, God, it's so awful watching these guys that used to be Predators score for the other team. And I'm like, is that really what we're going to make a big deal about today? Is that really what we're going to be upset about? Is Victor Arvidsson scoring a goal in the Stanley Cup final? And I have to be honest, I am so sick and so tired of any time a former Predators player scores a goal and Predators player Twitter has a massive meltdown about it. Philip Tomasino went to Pittsburgh, scored a couple of goals, and it was like, oh no. Yeah, how did Pittsburgh do this year? Oh, yeah, they suck too. And then when it comes to Arvidsson and Matthias Ekholm, like, Arvidsson is a third-line player who scored 15 goals this year. You are not a third-line player who scores 15 goals away from being the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers won because the Edmonton Oilers have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and nobody else does. And when it comes to Matthias Ekholm, it's like, yes, Ekholm's a very good player. And I always liked watching Ekholm play. And again, I understood because I wanted them to blow it up. I understood why Ekholm had to go, didn't have a problem, got it. But this idea that you would have been so much better off with Ekholm is just ridiculous. Because in 2022, when he was on the Predators, they were going nowhere. When they said, okay, now it's time to blow it up and start from scratch. And he was a big trade piece. And right now, again, if this team is going to be good in the near future, and I am not talking about next year. You know, it's hilarious because Joe Rexrode's like, well, you give a general manager 6 years. It's like, you do realize The Florida Panthers drafted Barkov and Ekblad in 13 and 14 and weren't good until 2020. You do realize it takes a little bit of time. But if the Predators are going to be good in the long term, it's going to be because of a guy like Tanner Mullendijk, whom they were able to draft with the draft pick that they got in exchange for Matthias Ekholm. So take a deep breath and just know it'll be fine. I'm looking at the camera. It will be fine. With Ekholm and Arvidsson and everybody else who used to play for the Predators. Is there really a single player out there that is playing in the Cup final or a single coach that is out there that you say, oh my God, we had him? Do you really miss John Hines? No. This organization needs new blood. It needs fresh, young faces, and it needs to stink, the way they stunk this year to get a player who might be a Porter Martone or a James Higgins, and then you have to hope that guy becomes Leon Draisaitl. But I'm not going to get worked up over Victor Arvidsson, who I never really liked that much because I always thought he was more of a high-effort player during the regular season. And he was a high-effort player during the regular season who didn't score a bunch of goals in the playoffs because, as Floyd used to say, when the big good guys play against the little good guys, the big good guys always win. And I'll never forget him getting into it with the callers about Arvidsson in 2017 because Arvidsson couldn't score any goals in the playoffs. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Dustin says, Arvidsson has historically been too small in the playoffs. However, he still delivers a point, pure heart player. There are dozens of coaches, but Barry should have at least 5 years to make the Predators competitive. I was with you, Jared. Now the Predators are just a nursing home and a farm team. Now they have to rebuild. Yossi and Forsberg are creeping towards retirement. So here's the thing that's tough. Like, they did spend a bunch of money. Adam Vingan, again, the guy who penned the article that said, in order to get better, the Predators must get worse. And now is saying, well, you didn't spend all that money to be bad. In fairness, there is some truth to that. And so with Saros making big money and a no trade clause that kicks in here with this new contract, that's going to be a problem. And I don't exactly know how they get over it. And Yossi's not going anywhere. Forsberg's not going anywhere. I heard Elliot Friedman today on with the Midday Show talking about Marchessault. He ain't going anywhere. So, I mean, they're going to try to win next year. They're going to try to be competitive. But again, I don't think they even think, and I certainly don't think they're going to be competing with Edmonton next year. No, you have to go get your big-time players in order to do that. It is kind of depressing, though, when you say it like that. They're somewhere along the lines of a nursing home and a farm team. Oof, that I'm not sure I totally like. One texter says, David Reed, to your point about the guys outside that are making the guys outside who are selling the autographs or whatever. One guy says that many people make more than $150 for certain cards that get signed, but the texter also says he would not wait outside of the stadium for people signing autographs for the money that they make doing that.
Yeah, I just think it's a little, I don't know, grown man doing it. I don't get it. That's like grown men fighting over foul balls.
Okay, let me tell you this. Let me ask you this. Let's just say, and I have no idea how much money the grown men standing outside of the visitors' entrance, outside First Horizon Park with their card books, getting guys to sign them and autograph them and everything. I have no idea how much money they make. This all started because I asked Reed, like, do these guys make money? Because they're here in the middle of the day. Like in the middle of the workday, they're here. Let me just, again, hypothetical. Let's say it's double your salary. Would you then go outside? If I told you, hey, the going rate is double, whatever you make now, Reed, it's double. To go do that, to stand outside for 6 months out of the year, and then you have to do it for the other sports too. So, like, you have to go stand outside the team hotel of wherever the Anaheim Ducks stay with your card book. But it is double what you make now. Would you stand outside First Horizon Park with a card book waiting for players to come sign autographs for you?
No, it's still, I don't want to be a creeper. It's still creepy. I don't care how much money is attached to it. It's creepy when grown men are stalking other grown men to have them sign a piece of paper. It's creepy.
I'm going to agree with you on one thing. I do think it's kind of weird. At the same time,
You're going to take the money.
I mean, it'd be pretty hard to turn down doubling my pay.
I don't know. I'm fat and it's hot outside right now.
I mean, at what point am I doing a disservice to my son if I'm not doubling my pay?
I don't have a kid, so I don't look at it that way. I just have ironically enough, I have a little dog named Arvidsson. So I don't have a little mouth to feed other than him. So I just can't do it. I guess, but I will say this for those guys, most of those guys who are out there doing it, especially the ones who are doing it at a minor league baseball stadium, absolutely love the game of baseball. I will give them that. Their passion for baseball runs very, very deep, but still.
Do you think these guys are staying for the game?
Oh, I think, yeah, absolutely. Because I've seen them get tickets along the dugouts of the opposing teams and are trying to get them to sign before and after the game. So yeah, I think they're coming in.
I do it for double my salary. As it'd be kind of tough though, man. Like, so what do you do for a living? I stand outside the ballpark and wait for people. You'd say something like, I work in memorabilia or something like that.
I mean, sports. It's the sports industry. It's all you need to know.
I mean, I guess. 615-737-1025. By the way, apparently Donald Parham got hurt, the backup tight end for the Steelers. He wears number 12. So now Rodgers is open. I guess he can wear number 12 because the guy who wore 12 apparently is no longer wearing it. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program if you want to weigh in. So I had a take yesterday about Jeffrey Simmons OTA absence, and I will say I got some pushback on it. Is it fair pushback? We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Chris Sanders, how concerned are you
Yeah.
with the fact that 2 weeks in a row, Jeffrey Simmons has been a no-show for OTAs?
I'm very, very concerned because the thing about it is when you call yourself a leader or they say you're a leader, then you got to be the first person in the building. You got to be the first person on the field. You got to be the first person just there. And with him not being there, I just think that you need to designate and put somebody else to leader because he's not leading by example. But listen, I understand it's a business and you don't want to get hurt. But at the end of the day, just show up so the rookies can hear your voice. Show up so the guys can even just listen to what you're saying. So I just think it's very disappointing. I'm not questioning the man that he's not working hard and doing what he's supposed to do to get on the field, but you need to be here with your presence to show the young rookies how to get it done, and he's just not there.
There you go. That was Chris Sanders on our show yesterday. And as much as I love Chris, and I love Chris with all my heart, you all know that, is there really somebody who is more glass half full when it comes to the Titans than Chris Sanders? First of all, there are very few people who are more glass half full when it comes to life than Chris Sanders. But how many people are there really out there glass half full like Chris Sanders? And even he is like, yeah, I'm disappointed in Simmons. So yesterday I made the comment based upon the whole put the team first, and that was what Belichick used to say, and we know what Vrabel was about and how big this offseason and the accountability and all of that with the leadership development and the 4-H's and everything Callahan is kind of pushing as his I got to save my job offseason. I said yesterday that if Mike Vrabel was the head coach, Jeffrey Simmons would not be sticking a middle finger to his coach by not showing up. Again, Callahan put some of this on himself, in my opinion, by kind of getting up in front of the media 2 weeks ago and talking about how I really believe that this system that we've put in place, this competitive nature that we're going for, this is going to put us over the top. This is going to affect decisions and plays and mistakes in October and September. And so now it's like, okay, Callahan's banking on this. And then Simmons doesn't show up. And I said he would not do this if Mike Vrabel was the coach. And somebody, again, I'm always open to listening to other opinions. I know sometimes you guys don't think that, but I am. Somebody said to me yesterday, and I would say this is somebody who's a little bit more invested in Brian Callahan's success than I am. But somebody said to me that it was unfair. Or they didn't say it was unfair, just their point of view was that it's unfair to say that this wouldn't happen if Mike Vrabel was the coach for 2 reasons. Number one, because Mike Vrabel didn't have 100% attendance at voluntary OTAs. And number two, because Mike Vrabel's team is in the news right now because Stephon Diggs was out partying on the boat with what looked like cocaine. Now, I heard Derek say on the air that he thinks they were gummies in the bag and not cocaine in the bag. I don't know what was in the bag, Reed. I don't know if you know what was in the bag, but it was something in the bag with Stephon Diggs.
I tried to do some research that day, and some Diddy stuff started popping up, so I didn't want that to be popping up maybe some substances that Diddy used, so I clicked out of it.
Okay. So the point being that, hey, Vrabel's dealing with Stephon Diggs right now. You're sitting here saying, this wouldn't happen if Mike Vrabel was the coach, but instead Vrabel's dealing with Stephon Diggs. And that is a very fair point. But here's the difference between the two. Brian Callahan was asked about Simmons last week, and he said, I don't need Jeff to be here. Jeff, I trust Jeff will be ready to go. There's nobody who I trust more than Jeff Simmons. There's nothing, blah, blah, blah. Again, just 100% all in. There's no hint of disappointment when it comes to the Titans and Jeff Simmons and Brian Callahan. Just like there's no hint of disappointment when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed allegedly being involved in a shooting during the season last year when it comes to Brian Callahan and Denard Wilson. Mike Vrabel let it be known the day after Stephon Diggs was on the boat with the video, how incredibly disappointed he was when he said, "Now, I talk to all the players and we talk about making good decisions." And not only that, Albert Breer reported that the reason Diggs wasn't at OTAs after that, Diggs was there before the boat, but wasn't after until this week, was because the team said, stay away. Because the team was thinking about releasing Stephon Diggs. Scott Zolak, who hosts a midday show there and is the radio analyst of the Patriots, was saying, I'm hearing that they're kicking it around right now to get rid of Stephon Diggs. And if we could read, Mike Florio had a cut this morning where he actually got a hold of Diggs' contract. Gee, I wonder who gave it to him. Where he got a hold of Diggs' contract, and he has discovered that they can cut Stephon Diggs if they want to. Here's what Florio said.
And let's be realistic about this. Now, some will scoff and call it a conspiracy theory. I think others understand this is how the sausage gets made. The Patriots have a path, as we discussed yesterday, in the Stephon Diggs contract for getting out of it.
Yep.
If he doesn't pass his physical, oh, well, sorry, we wanted you here. We had no plans to release you, but you didn't pass your physical. Our hands are tied. The doctor made the decision. We didn't tell the doctor what to do. That's the medical prerogative of the doctor.
Okay, so he's saying they've got an out. The Patriots have an out. How would Florio know that? They told him. So let's compare these two situations. Granted, what Simmons is doing by not showing up is not the same as what Stephon Diggs did, and I'm not arguing that. But if your point is, hey, Mike Vrabel, you say that Mike Vrabel wouldn't have it, look at what he's dealing with Stephon Diggs. Again, it's voluntary. There's no proof in the video. You know, somebody texted into the text line and said it was some pink synthetic stuff, which is way worse than cocaine. I have no idea. I've actually never done cocaine before. I don't think I'll ever do it. You know, maybe like when I'm 85 and have nothing to lose, maybe I would consider something like that. But I've never done it, and I probably won't do it. And I'm probably the last person who needs to be on cocaine anyways. But again, I don't know the difference between the stuff, but that is worse than what Simmons did. But there is technically no proof that Diggs did anything wrong, which of course Diggs can say, oh, no, they were gummy bears. They weren't even infused with it. They were, what's that brand that they sell? Haribo? They were Haribo gummies. That's all they were. I mean, I didn't even know they were gummies until I heard Derek say that, and I don't think they were, but that's what he thought. I don't know. Again, as soon as it happened, Mike Vrabel voiced his displeasure with it. As soon as it went down in that week, the Patriots are telling people with microphones like Albert Breer and Scott Zolak and Mike Florio, yeah, if Diggs doesn't straighten up and fly right, he is out of here. They can't afford to lose Stephon Diggs. They don't have any receivers. Who are they going to throw the ball to? And yet, they're telling you, and they're telling everyone, we're going to put our foot down. What's Callahan do? What's Callahan done since the day he got here? He just goes to bat, lets players do whatever they want. Simmons throws a punch in practice, lets him do whatever he wants. Vrabel wouldn't have done that. Simmons goes over, yells at Buck. What's Callahan do about it? I remember last year there was this big argument between the pro-Simmons group and the anti-Simmons group. The pro-Simmons group saying, it's not fair that people criticize him for not sacking the quarterback because he gets double-teamed. And the anti-Simmons group saying, well, maybe Simmons needs to sack the quarterback because that's what good players do. And Denard Wilson would get up there and talk about how, you know, just because Jeff isn't getting sacks doesn't mean that Jeff isn't making an impact in the game. Well, when the quarterback is standing back there and says hike and just pats the ball 10 times, I mean, you could say whatever you want about Simmons, but he's clearly not impacting the game. And that's what he's paid to do. But with the Titan coaching staff, no Titan players ever messed up. No Titan coach has ever messed up. No Titan coach and no Titan player. I mean, the way they talk about it, they let these guys get away with everything. And that's the crux of the issue. That, again, Vrabel had his faults. If I was a Patriot fan, I would not trust Vrabel to develop the quarterback. If I was a Patriot fan, I would be scared to death of Vrabel's coaching staff, which includes all of his buddy besties that were around here who kind of sucked, although Terrell Williams is a good coach. I mean, if I was a Patriot fan, there'd be things about Vrabel that worry me. Holding players accountable, that's not one of them. Callahan, he's made a whole system to be able to preach accountability, and Jeffrey Simmons isn't here. I have a hard time believing that Mike Vrabel would just sit there and take it the way that it looks like Brian Callahan is just going to sit there and take it from Jeffrey Simmons. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of coaches, what one of Simmons' coaches had to say, we have got to get to that cut. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
What's Jeff's offseason been like to this point?
It's been pretty consistent for Jeff, I think. Again, whether you see him every day here or not, there's one person on this team, probably more than anybody, I never worry about being ready to play on Sunday, and that's Jeff. So I'm pleased with where he's at. He's working. I know he's ready to roll. So that's pretty all I can say to that. You'll find out.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking last week about Simmons. We're like, hey, is Simmons here today? You'll find out. But there's nobody I trust to be better at being here than Jeffrey Simmons. There's nobody. He's just so great. And again, I have such a hard time with the acquiescing, with the kowtowing, with the feet kissing that the Tennessee Titans do for 5-sack Jeffrey Simmons. It's so embarrassing. It's so beneath you. It's like, imagine what happens if Brian Callahan actually has the opportunity to coach someone who's actually really good. I mean, then at that point, he might just let that guy drive his car. He might just let the guy call the plays for him. I mean, it's embarrassing. In fact, as someone said, has anyone actually asked Callahan if Simmons gave him a reason for his absence? Taylor from Bellevue. You don't need to, because he'll turn it into how great Simmons is, period. But here's the one I can't get over. So, again, this is not my business about who's there, who's not, unless you make it my business, unless you tell me that the offseason is just so important that this is going to be what saves us in October and September, and then your best player doesn't show up. But the Titan assistant coaches met with the media yesterday. That includes Tracy Rocker, the defensive line coach, Kumar Rocker's father, who was the line coach at one point, then went and coached in the SEC a bunch, and now he's back as the D-line coach of the Titans last year. And Tracy Rocker was asked about the fact that Jeffrey Simmons hasn't shown up at all for training camp for OTAs or anything like that. And here's the latest Titan coach discussing where in the world is Jeffrey Simmons.
Jeff is not here at practice, but Jeff is here. Okay, and that's one thing I think we tend to forget. He's here. Jeff is always talking to Denard, and we have a conversation with Jeff. Oh no, we'll see him when it's time, and it was the same deal we had last year with him. So this is not something new. He's a foundation piece for us, and we're looking forward to seeing him.
The sweat, can you?
Okay, we're going to play this one again because now you've heard it the first time. I want you to hear it the second time. So he starts off by saying, well, just because Jeff isn't here at practice doesn't mean that Jeff isn't here. Except for the fact that Kaharski reported last week that Snead wasn't there for practice, but he was there. Sweat wasn't there for practice, but he was there. And then Sweat was there for practice this week. That Zeitler wasn't there for practice, but he was there. But that the only guy who wasn't there, period, was Simmons. And if PK had gotten that wrong, somebody at the Titans would have reached out to PK and he would have corrected the reporting. So I'm going to take PK at his word when he says Simmons isn't there. So first off, Tracy Rocker starts off with, just because Jeff isn't here at practice doesn't mean that Jeff isn't here. Now, can't I argue that practice is probably the most important part of all of this? And then finally, this idea of, hey, Jeff's a foundational piece, and when it's time, he'll be here. Isn't the time now? Isn't that what Brian Callahan was preaching when he talked about how he's going to emphasize mistakes being made in the offseason and it's going to help them when it comes to not making mistakes during the season? Or does Jeffrey Simmons not need practice at not making mistakes? Because I watched Titans play last year. Jeffrey Simmons is not infallible. In fact, Jeffrey Simmons got called for a personal foul on a missed field goal against the Green Bay Packers by Braden Narvison. And on that personal foul, on the missed field goal, which would have resulted in 0 points for the Green Bay Packers, now the Packers get an automatic first down and turn that into a touchdown. So are you telling me that Simmons doesn't need any of the work? Now, let's play the cut again.
Jeff is not here at practice, but Jeff is here. Okay, and that's one thing I think we tend to forget. He's here. Jeff is always talking to Denard, and we have conversation with Jeff. Oh no, we'll see him when it's time, and it was the same deal we had last year with him. So this is not something new. He's a foundation piece for us, and we're looking forward to seeing him.
Jeffrey Simmons not big. That's not nothing new. Jeffrey Simmons not showing up to the OTAs. That's not nothing new. Well, last year, the Titans presented Simmons in a way that was really unfair to him, but was also not worthy of his ability as a leader because he does not have any ability as a leader. But without Derrick Henry and without Kevin Byard, the Titans put Simmons out there as our guy. And nobody was more eager and willing to take the baton to be the team spokesperson than Jeffrey Simmons. And that was truly a disaster. And it was a disaster on the field, and it was a disaster off the field. So if you mean to tell me that last year, Jeffrey Simmons did everything this same way, and he had this disastrous season, and the team had this disastrous season, and now the coach is saying, well, I've thought long and hard about what needed to change. And what needed to change was not any of my coaches, but what really needed to change was the offseason program and the way that we focused on holding guys accountable. And Simmons is doing the same thing. Well, then what's going to change? And again, it gives me no faith in the Titans. It gives me no faith in Callahan. Tracy Rocker just, it'll be fine. Was it fine last year? Because Simmons thinks his season last year was fine. I don't think Simmons' season last year was fine. Mike says, given how the coaches are seemingly afraid to address Simmons' absence, shouldn't he be expected to have a career year this season? Well, it depends. What do you want to say? Do you want to say, well, if you're going to do this, I expect a career year, or do you want me to be blunt with everybody? I expect this team to stink this year. And I think the talent on it's not very good. But most importantly, I don't know if the coach can hold anybody accountable. And I don't think you can run a successful anything if the guy at the top can't hold people accountable. I don't think you can be a successful president if you don't hold people accountable. I don't think you can be a successful CEO if you don't hold the people underneath you accountable. I don't think you can be a successful athletic director. I don't think you can be a successful general manager. And I don't think you should be a successful head coach if you're afraid to hold people accountable. And it seems to me like Brian Callahan doesn't ever feel the need to hold anybody accountable, except for the one coach that he fired last year, that again, that happened with him kicking and screaming. Cameron says, Simmons thinking he doesn't have to show up for practice as the best player on the team while not in a contract dispute is something that only happens on losing teams with losing culture. This would never happen on the Chiefs. It kills me when dudes act like this on terrible teams and then get traded to good teams and become perfect angels. I don't know if Simmons ever really has it in him to be a perfect angel. That's just me. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. Robbie and Rexroad gave Charles Robinson at Yahoo Sports a homework assignment this week. And what Charles came back with should not surprise anyone. The fact that it doesn't seem like the Titans have a plan should also not surprise anyone. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and we are live today, First Horizon Park. Sounds and the Gwinnett Stripers tonight, 6:35. The Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, and holy crap, what a train wreck loss for the Atlanta Braves today. When I went to lunch before the show, it was 9-3 Braves. And I thought, well, okay, you know. And then I had people texting me last hour saying apparently the Braves lost 11-10. Just a disaster. Anywho, Robbie and Rexroad had Charles Robinson on their program this morning. And I guess Joe said, Charles, we gave you a homework assignment. This is the senior NFL insider for Yahoo Sports. And I think Charles has some pretty good information. And so they said, Charles, we gave you a homework assignment. Find out what the market for Will Levis is. And I thought about cutting for you what Charles Robinson said, but David Reed, something you're going to learn, and I love Charles Robinson, but Charles can be very long-winded sometimes when it comes to trying to find a cut to clip. I would just say that I'll sum this up for you. Tasked with a homework assignment of finding out what the market for Will Levis really is, Charles Robinson, talking to teams around the league, said there really isn't a market out there for Will Levis. Perhaps Liam Cohen in Jacksonville could be a spot, but again, it's not like Charles said Jacksonville has interest in Levis. It's just maybe that could be one spot with the one guy who was his coordinator in college at Kentucky. Let me just say this. The Titans are in no position to deal Will Levis right now because the time to do that has passed. Here's how the NFL offseason works. The NFL offseason, it's very odd. The season is over at the very beginning of January, but all those players are still technically on their teams until the beginning of March. The new league year opens on March 14th, and free agency begins on March 16th or whatever in a given year. Now, between January and March 14th, what happens is the agents and the teams talk. And the teams talk. And so everybody kind of gets an idea of who's going to be out there. They call it the free agent board, where they put down, okay, here's everybody who's a free agent. Here's everybody who's likely to be cut. Here's everybody that may be up for a trade. Here's all these different things. And here's what it'll cost. And everybody starts to map this out. And when it comes to backup quarterbacks and the backup quarterback market, the backup quarterback market works like this. Guys like Josh Dobbs, who know they are backup quarterbacks. Mason Rudolph, who knows he's a backup quarterback. I'm going to tell you right now, Mason Rudolph is not surprised by any stretch of the imagination. Like, that's it. He knows Aaron Rodgers was going to sign the whole time. Aaron Rodgers signed. It's not surprising to him, but he'll still get his $4 million to be the backup, which is what he signed up to do. So, again, when it comes to Mason Rudolph, and it comes to Josh Dobbs, and it comes to your typical backups, these guys try to sign as fast as possible because they want to get as much money as humanly possible, and they want to guarantee that they know where they're going to be and they're not going to be on the outside looking in. So they all sign. Just like when you signed Brandon Allen. Brandon Allen was a backup. Brandon Allen waited for who would give him a backup spot. He gets it from you. Okay, I sign. The other thing teams do for backup quarterbacks, especially the teams that don't want to pay for a backup quarterback, because Josh Dobbs is $4.3 million and Mason Rudolph is in the $4 million category, is teams with established veteran quarterbacks will look at trading for a young guy who's not making a lot of money so that they can put him in as the backup. That's what happened with Kenny Pickett in Philadelphia last year. Philly's paying $1 gazillion for their roster. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, the 2 tackles, the tight end, and the entire defense. That's not cheap. And while Howie Roseman doesn't care about the salary cap and will spend all the money that he wants to spend and everything else, the reality is that they're going to try to skimp in other spots. Backup quarterback is one of them. Where right now, I believe the backup quarterback situation there is Tanner McKee and Dorian Thompson-Robinson saying, if we get an injury there, we're screwed anyways. Who cares? We're not going to spend any money there. We're just going to go with the flow. If the Titans were going to move on Will Levis, the time to do it would have been about March 16th. Maybe even before free agency opened, before the veteran quarterbacks could hit those spots. That's it. But once all the backup quarterback slots filled up, whether it was Josh Dobbs in New England or Joe Milton in Dallas, or once all the backup slots filled up, nobody's going to want to trade anything for Will Levis. So now that ship has sailed. And at that point in time, at the Combine, the Titans were adamant, we're not trading Will Levis. Chad Brinker had a quote from Jim Wyatt after the Combine on Titan Stationery saying, we're not interested in trading Will Levis. Again, Chad Brinker is Jim Wyatt's boss. Jim Wyatt only writes something that Chad Brinker said if Chad Brinker tells him to do it. This isn't like Jim Wyatt reached out to Chad Brinker and said, hey, I'd like to do a sit-down interview with you. No. They said, we want it out there that we're not trading Levis. Then before the draft, they said they weren't interested in trading Levis. After the draft, they were asked if they had thought about trading Levis, and they said no. So every step along the way, the Titans have said we're not interested in trading Will Levis, which now takes them to this awkward stage where we all know deep down inside Cam Ward's going to be the starting quarterback. And we all know that they brought Brandon Allen to be the backup. And we all know that Tim Boyle is going to be the fourth camp arm. So what's the point of having Will Levis on the team? And some people will say, well, they want to pump him up so then they can trade him. When's the last time you've seen that happen? Joe Milton went out there against the Buffalo Bills backups and had a better game than Will Levis has had in his entire career, with the exception of the first game that he ever played. And Joe Milton, the 6th-round pick, was traded for a 5th-round pick and brought a 7th back. I mean, there's no real value here. So what happened with the Levis thing was the Titans just don't have a plan. The Titans said, oh, yeah, no, we're not going to trade him. We're going to develop him. But in all seriousness, develop him for what? He's got 2 more years on his contract, and I believe that over those 2 years, they really want Cam Ward to play quarterback. That's why, again, in the past, when a team has had a young quarterback who didn't perform, they shipped him off before the offseason started so that those teams could just get anything in return. So that New England could get anything in return for Mac Jones. So that Washington and then later Seattle could get anything in return for Sam Howell. And the only way that this makes any sense, the Titans knew they were going to draft Cam Ward. The Titans have said since the Combine, which is at the end of February and the beginning of March. The Combine's always like February 26th through March 8th. Since the Combine, the Titans said they knew they were going to draft Cam Ward. And at that moment, that's when they should have been trying to trade Will Levis. Well, once they didn't try to trade Will Levis, that should lead you to believe that they have a plan in place. But then they signed Brandon Allen. So what's the plan in place? And it doesn't make any sense until you realize one simple thing. It's the Titans. It's the Titans. Once you realize that it's the Titans, and I tell you they don't have a plan, that should tell you all you need to know. Because we've seen since the Titans fired John Robinson on that day in 2022, they've had no plan. I can argue you can even go back before that when I kept waiting for John Robinson to go get a right tackle or a left guard, and they said, we're going to roll with Aaron Brewer. It's crazy because the NFL franchises are worth so much money. This is a multi-billion-dollar operation. And you would think that they would have a better plan for how to manage their quarterback situation. But again, Charles Robinson's out there talking to teams saying, does anybody have any interest in Will Levis? And these teams are saying to Charles Robinson, we don't. I mean, maybe Jacksonville would, but we don't. And so it's like, okay, now you have Will Levis on your team. It's going to be a massive distraction, especially if he plays well in the preseason or in training camp. You're trying to bring along the young rookie Cam Ward. You've brought in Brandon Allen to be the backup. What's the plan here? And the answer is, as is the case with the Titans, oftentimes, they don't have one. The end. Like, that's how it works. What's your plan? They'll say a bunch of gobbledygook, but again, in all seriousness, what's the Titans' plan here with Levis? They don't have one. And it's so hysterical that we're, again, at this same point. 615-737-1025 on the phone lines. That's 615-737-1025. We'll hit some of those. Plus, the one place people think Levis might end up traditionally does not happen. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
right away, people should stare at, Jacksonville. He said Jacksonville's Nick Mullins is their backup. That's one of, excuse me, he says one of the worst backups in the league. He said, but what's more important there is who's their head coach? And I said, well, Liam Cohen. He said, well, do you know what Liam Cohen was doing during Will Levis's junior year at Kentucky? Or his good year before he went pro in Kentucky. And I said, I don't remember. It's just stupid. He said, man, he said, Liam Cohen was Will Levis's offensive coordinator at Kentucky, the last good year that Will Levis had at Kentucky. He said, Liam Cohen was a huge Will Levis proponent coming into the draft when he was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. And now he's the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's like, how did you not make this connection? I was like, because I'm stupid.
There you go. That was Charles Robinson this morning along with Robbie and Joe. So Charles Robinson asked people, what do you think about the market for Levis? And they're like, not for us, but hey, maybe Jacksonville and Liam Cohen. I will say this. I talked to Liam Cohen before the 2023 draft, and he sold me on Will Levis as much as you could possibly sell somebody. I mean, he was telling me the kind of guy Will Levis is. I mean, this is the kind of guy you want. I said, what do you mean? He goes, Will Levis's academic advisor at Penn State drove down to Indianapolis to watch him throw at the combine. That's how much these people that are around Will Levis believe in Will Levis. And now Liam Cohen is the head coach in Jacksonville. And the one reason why a lot of people would be weary of trading Will Levis to Jacksonville is obviously because it's inside the division. And I could see Amy Adams Strunk, who once again with a straight face told all of you a reason to be excited and optimistic about the future of the Titans last year was because they had ran a bunch of cap space and a good young quarterback. So at some point she really, really loved Will Levis. And let's not kid ourselves. Will Levis's best buddy in the organization is Bryce Wasserman, who is Amy's either current son-in-law or future son-in-law, who's kind of her de facto go-to when it comes to what's going on inside the building. That being said, I wouldn't have a problem with him going to Jacksonville. And here's why. Number one, Will Levis is not going to be Jacksonville's quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is Jacksonville's quarterback. So if you end up having, if you trade Will Levis to Jacksonville, he's probably never going to get on the field anyways. Number two, if you think Will Levis sucks so bad that you use the first overall pick on Cam Ward, that you turned down the Giants' offer for all those picks because you knew Levis stunk and you knew you were going with Cam Ward, then why would you be so afraid of Will Levis being somewhere else? And I will say this, I actually believed this offseason, because this is what normal teams do. I thought if the Titans were going to draft a quarterback or sign a Sam Darnold or something like that, that you would have seen the Titans trade away Will Levis to Tampa Bay, where they already have an established veteran starter in Baker Mayfield. Kyle Trask at the time was a free agent. They have re-signed him, but he sucks. So I could have seen that if Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator still in Tampa Bay. So I don't have a problem with Jacksonville. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Jacksonville. And I'm not going to say, no. Don't send Will Levis there, because I don't care who his coach is. I don't care if it's Bill Walsh. I'm not sure how much of a difference it'll make. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to get in. Adam is up next here on the program. Adam, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, you hit on two things, man, and I wanted to kind of bring them together. So if you look at, because I agree, Titans do not make good decisions, but if you are trying to, objectively look at it, what do they see in Levis to make them not move on just yet from Levis? I could see it, right? He's got a rocket arm. He's young. He's a second-round quarterback. You hate to admit that you messed up that bad with a second-round quarterback. With Jeffrey Simmons, that's completely different. What are you doing defending Jeffrey Simmons left and right? What is he to this team right now if you're in the organization? Because I'm racking my head on it, because I see Cam and I'm like, dude, I really want him to succeed. But if that's the leadership he gets to look up to, is Jeffrey Simmons a great player? You either need to be a great player or a great guy. And I don't think he's either one, man. Coming in, he had character issues. Everybody wants to act like he didn't have that. He had that. And then the Buck thing, it wasn't just yelling at him. He was saying vulgar, horrible things to Buck for doing his job. I don't think he's a good guy at all, dude. And then as a player, he doesn't get sacks anymore, the thing he was supposed to be good at. So, like, I get why you go to bat for Will. I don't get why you go to bat anymore for Jeffrey Simmons.
Well, I'm just going to say this. At least there's a spot on the field for Jeffrey Simmons to play. And like Jeffrey Simmons, again, we can knock him all we want. He should be a better player, especially the way he acts. Jeffrey Simmons is a good NFL player. You can't say that about Will Levis. Will Levis is a joke. Literally, he is a joke. When you bring him up, people are like, oh, yeah, ha, 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 ha. Simmons is not a joke, though the whole situation is embarrassing for the way that the Titans talk about him. You know, but again, everything the Titans, I mean, don't you guys think it's embarrassing when your coach gets up there after you won 3? And again, I like Callahan, but you win 3 games in an NFL season, and your coach gets up there and he says, I have the answer. We're going to take our entire team and split them up into 8 separate teams, and we're going to have a point system, and we're not going to really know what the winners get, and we're not going to really know what the losers get, and we can't actually make any of these guys do any of this stuff, but we're going to develop this team bonding, kumbaya, rainbow, sunshine, pumpery. We're not going to change any of the coaches from the horrible season we had last year, except for the special teams coach, which we're only going to change kicking and screaming because, you know, he has to go. But I know he's a good coach, all of that kind of stuff. But this is our big plan. Like, isn't that kind of a joke? And the thing I'll say about Simmons is while Simmons is annoying, and it's obnoxious that Simmons is not a better player with all the talking that he does, he is a good NFL player. You can't say that about Levis, at least not right now. Jared is up next here on Will Levis. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Jared.
Man, if I feel like if Levis goes down to Jacksonville, he has the exact personality of Liam Cohen. They're both goobers, so I feel like he'd fit in pretty well. But, yeah, the Titans, to your point, I just really don't understand how they can drop the ball on a lot of their issues. And I'm wondering, you, Stillman, where do you – since, I mean, we are told that Amy is a off-campus owner and all that. So who do you put all this, like, where's your blame meter lie with how this is being conducted with, you know, within the management? Because it's almost like a reality TV show anymore. And you don't have to go that far to find the drama. So, but I'm here for the drama because that's really about all the Titans can provide anymore because it's not good football play. So yeah, I'd just love to hear you. Who you blame on that stuff? And then I don't know. Have a good afternoon, brother. Tighten up.
Yep. Thank you. Here's what I would say. I blame Amy because Amy being a hands-off owner or a not in the building owner is not an excuse. So I blame Amy first and foremost. And again, I go back to the beginning of all this, which I believe was Amy firing John Robinson in the middle of the season when they were in first place. That's when I look back at this and say, that is when the Titans started making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. People will say it's the A.J. Brown trade, and you're entitled to that belief. The Titans were 7-3 without A.J. Brown. Like 7-3. You know, that's a good start to the season. So, again, that's just my opinion. You can have your opinion one way or another. On the front of, okay, if you're not going to blame Amy, who are you going to blame? Here's a problem the Titans have. And this goes back to how I have felt for 2 years. The day after the 2023 season. So this is Tannehill, Henry, Levis, Vrabel, Tim Kelly's the offensive coordinator, etc. I said I would fire everybody. I said I'd clean house. And that includes Vrabel. And the pushback I got was, you can't fire a first-year general manager. That's not fair. And the pushback I got was, that's racist. Rand Carthon, you can't fire him. And I said, well, you have two choices. You can either fire him or you can promote him. Because Rand Carthon was hired. Whether this is fair or not, it's just reality. Rand Carthon was hired to work with Mike Vrabel to build a football team. And they could not work together. They could not do the job that he was hired for. So now your choice is either go all in on Rand Carthon or blow it all up and start over. And I said that I would blow it all up and start over. I would clean house and I would hire an experienced football guy to come in and run the operation. Thomas Dimitrov, Rick Spielman, you name it. An experienced guy who has been the head honcho before and knows how the league works. Again, I don't think everywhere needs an experienced general manager or an experienced head coach every year. But I think this team in that moment needed an experienced general manager who had been through it. They went the exact opposite way. They argued with me about, you'll see. You will see, Jared. I mean, I'm serious, like real conversations. And then a year later, they kind of admitted, yeah, no, we screwed that up. And look at it right now. Brinker has no experience to be running a football operation. Zero. Being fifth in command at the Green Bay Packers, or whatever he was, is not enough to be first in command with the Titans. Borgonzi, no experience. Although I do like some of the things I've seen out of Borgonzi at this point, we'll see. But no experience. Callahan, no experience. I mean, how are these guys going to know what pitfalls to avoid if they, A, have never been through it, and none of the guys working for them have been through it? Denard Wilson has no experience. Nick Holtz has no experience. The only guy who's got any experience is Bones Fossil, and he's the only guy that I have faith in over there. But again, I think that keeps going with Amy, which is the new guy is always undefeated. I can bring up any guy and you can tell me, well, look at that mistake that guy made. Because they all make mistakes. But I can also show you teams that these guys have built. And I can say, Thomas Dimitrov built a team that was capable of leading by 25 points in a Super Bowl. And the only reason they lost that game is because Freddie freaking Krueger was the other team's quarterback and Kyle Shanahan crapped his pants. That's not Thomas's fault. But again, it's like, no, we want the inexperienced guy that hasn't proven he can do it. And then you end up with, Rand Carthon. More of your phone, 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, the explanation or expectation is probably the right word. The expectation that I have for Will Levis. What's actually going to happen here? Because again, we know Cam Ward's going to eventually be the quarterback. We'll get to that next. Hey, tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on Gwinnett at First Horizon Park. Pregame 6:20, first pitch 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game National app at theGameNational.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan. Presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. We are live here today out at First Horizon Park, and do not miss out on Nashville's best deals. Great offers from 312 Pizza Company, Beach Bend Amusement Park and Splash Lagoon Water Park, Central Barbecue, Fog Street Lot Club, and more. Get them now while supplies last at theGameNational.com/deals.
it was easier, I think, for Chicago to move Justin Fields than I think it is for the Titans to move Will Levis. Why? Because Will Levis has this, what do you call those things that they used to have back in, the 1600s, where you used to have to walk around with this
The scarlet letter?
Yeah, the chain, that thing around your neck saying you did something bad or you just a bad person.
A sandwich board?
I guess so. And there's a historic name for it. I just don't know what it is now. But that's Will Levis now. Justin Fields wasn't walking around with that, I don't think. Will Levis is. Why? Because when we talked about when we saw or talked about the Titans, it was always Will Levis did this. Will Levis did that. The coach just told him not to do that, and look what he did. So we don't speak of Will Levis glowingly. So the Titans can't get rid of him. They can't make a move with him. Why? Because there might not be a lot of suitors out there, and if there is one at all.
There you go. That was D. Mays talking about Levis, saying, I mean, why would anybody want Levis after the year he had last year? And I totally get it. Phones, 615-737-1025. By the way, here's my expectation for Levis, which is I believe the Titans are going to do what they did with Malik Willis last year, which is he's going to play in the preseason, and the Titans will trade him for a bag of footballs after the preseason like they did with Malik Willis, and that's that. And I think, quite frankly, we have all wasted too much time talking about Will Levis, because who cares about a backup quarterback that might be the third-string quarterback that if you do trade him, you'll get a 6th-round pick in return? Like, what's the point of talking about that? That is just not that big of a deal. And I knew when they benched Levis and said Rudolph was the starter, I knew it's over. I mean, I think we run a promo where I say, once you make that decision, that you don't go back. That's what Floyd told me, is once you have somebody and he's the guy and you take him out, he's no longer the guy. And I know you'll say, well, but Carolina didn't. Again, the Carolina Panthers are not the epitome of a well-run organization. Not that the Titans are either, but once you give up on a guy, that's always in the back of everybody's mind, is that you've already given up on that guy. So I just think we've wasted too much time talking about Levis anyway, at least as far as I'm concerned, because it's not going to be a big deal. They're not really going to get much in return. But he is a star in terms of the show and people talking about him because he was the quarterback. And this time last year, there were hopes and prayers that he was going to be the next Dan Marino. So at that point, it is what it is. 615-737-1025. Thomas in Hendersonville says, why are people overlooking the fact that the Titans' offensive line last year was god-awful? Tannehill himself could not have done as well behind that line as he did in previous years. Not to mention they didn't have Derrick Henry. My theory, the texter says, is the Titans are going to trot Will Levis out there during the preseason behind what should be an improved offensive line, let him shine a little bit, and then wait for a team to come calling in the middle of the season. Teams always need quarterback depth throughout the season. How many quarterback trades are there in a given year? And again, whatever Will Levis does, it's not going to be enough to make a team say, okay, let's give up something good. And let me say this. There's one thing that I think does need to be addressed here, because people will defend Will Levis with how bad the line was, or how bad the coach is, or how bad the receivers were, or the fact that they haven't gotten him a defensive line, or how bad the special teams were. And the special teams were awful, and that is independent of Will Levis. And the coach kind of looks like a joke, so that may be independent of Will Levis. I will say, Levis had an opportunity last year, and in week 2, he got up there and talked about DeMario on the other team. And the other team didn't have a DeMario. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Again, if you can't figure out who's on the other team, you can't play quarterback in the NFL. I watched the Darren Bates podcast, The Raw Room. They had Brandon Bolden on, who was a running back for those Brady Patriot teams. And he told me something that Floyd had told me in the past. So he said something in that interview that I had heard about in the past, which is when you show up on Wednesday in New England, Bill Belichick would expect you to know everything about the team you're about to play. So everything about you need to know who the owner is. You need to know who the general manager is. You need to know where he went to college. You need to know about the offensive coordinator. You need to know about where he was before. You need to know all these things. Floyd told me the veteran players were smart. They would keep notebooks. So when it was time to go back to the next team, they would just have that notebook already ready because we played them last year. Levis gets up there 2 days into preparation for the Jets and talks about DeMario, who was not on the Jets. That should tell you all you need to know. And for me, that was kind of one of those, okay, I figured it out. Like, I figured it out. This guy, he ain't got it. So, yes. And the other thing is, hopefully the Titans don't make the same mistakes they made for Will for Cam. But that, again, is something that we'll have to see. One texter says, I've been saying for months the Titans are going to pump up Levis and then trade him. Again, what are you going to get in return? A sixth, a seventh. That's really going to rebuild the team. That's really worth all the talking we've been doing. Come on now. 615-737-1025. TD will be here at the top of the hour for the TD Power Hour. But coming up next, Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight. And there's something that's like an NBA problem that I'm not sure there's really anything they can do about it. But it does kind of take away from what we're used to with the NBA Finals. I have a thought. We'll get to it next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. The PFL World Championship semifinals are Thursday, June 12th at Municipal Auditorium, and you can be there. Text in the keyword MATCH, M-A-T-C-H, to 615-737-1025 now to be entered to win a pair of VIP ringside tickets. Visit pflmma.com/schedule for more details.
it's one thing I really admire about the NFL. I mean, if we were going into a Super Bowl and it was Packers against Steelers, you guys would be celebrating that. Those would be storied franchises. People wouldn't be talking about, the fact that Pittsburgh is a small market. So in fact, I'm happy whatever team ends up in the finals, but it's been intentional from our standpoint to create a system, a collective bargaining agreement that allows more teams to compete. And just by way of background, we're going to have to go through a process of getting to the point where people are accustomed to tuning into the finals because it's the two teams that deserve to be there, and it's the best basketball. Similar to, again, with the Super Bowl, if I asked somebody if they were going to watch the Super Bowl, they wouldn't say who's playing. It's a national holiday, and now that's nirvana.
That's the goal.
I'm not saying we're anywhere close to that yet. There's still, if the Knicks are in the finals, there's a segment of our fan base that's going to watch that may not watch if it's other teams. But my job is to get people to love and follow this game. And so that if you're a huge basketball fan, you should want to tune into the finals because that's the best basketball.
There you go. That was Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, game one of the NBA finals tonight. And there has been a lot of talk about the fact that it is OKC versus Indiana in the NBA finals. Now, I'm not Mr. NBA. I've never claimed to be Mr. NBA. My interest level in the NBA finals on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being how I used to feel back in the Jordan days, is like a 2.5. And it may be lower than that, to be completely honest with you. But a lot of people blame the commissioner for certain things. I don't know how you blame the commissioner for the fact that OKC and Indiana earned the right to be in the NBA finals. If you have a scenario like that for baseball, where it's the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks, what do? You just suck it up and deal with it. And you're going to get bad TV ratings. That's not the issue here. And there's nothing the league or the commissioner can do about that. There's another thing that I'm not sure the commissioner or the league can do anything about, but it is an inherent NBA problem. There's not a guy anymore in the NBA that gets me, and I would assume a lot of other people, to turn on the TV. There is not a new guy. Like, there's not a next generation at this point guy to carry the baton from LeBron James. And I do wonder who the next guy in the NBA is going to be, because for the most part, we've always had that guy. Larry Bird was the guy. Go back to the old Converse commercial where they had, I want to say, Mark Aguirre and Bernard King and Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas. And at the end of it, Larry Bird says, you know what, the Converse weapon, which was the shoe, you know what it did for me? And everybody around him, Mark Aguirre and those guys, are what? And Larry Bird goes, I walked away with the MVP. And then from Larry, it was Magic. And if you'll remember, Magic with the Lakers and Kareem, and again, it was a great rivalry between the two. You had the Bad Boy Pistons for a couple of years, but that was still at the end of Larry and Magic and at the beginning of Michael, where Michael was starting to come back. Michael beat Magic for his first title. It was kind of a passing of the torch, and everybody knew it too. Like, Magic Johnson ran to the Bulls locker room after game 5 of the 91 finals, and he hugged Michael because it was like, all right, Michael, now it's your game. From Michael, it went to Kobe. From Kobe, it went to LeBron. And I don't know who the next guy is. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, they're too old, plus their days are behind them. It's over for them. So, and I think Curry probably belongs in the grouping with LeBron. I don't think Durant belongs in there. So who's next? Last year, I think there was a hope maybe Jason Tatum could be that guy in Boston. But Jason Tatum's hurt. And I'm not sure that Jason Tatum gets people to the TV, because he didn't get them to the TV last year. And I'm not sure Jason Tatum has the personality to be Kobe, Michael, LeBron. SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the OKC Thunder, I don't think he's getting people to the TV this year. Now, if he wins a couple of titles in a row, that'll get people to the TV. But again, I don't see him as some sort of transcendent star. Again, we're talking about Michael Jordan and Larry Bird here. I don't see it. Cooper Flagg hasn't even been drafted yet. Although I will say this, and I got criticized for this, but I believe it. When I saw Cooper Flagg in the NCAA tournament, because I didn't watch a lot of Duke basketball this year. When I saw Cooper Flagg in the tournament, I did say to myself, that's what I imagine LeBron would have looked like in college. So Cooper Flagg might be the next guy. But again, it's hard to put that kind of pressure on the number one pick to say, okay, now you've got to go be the next guy in the NBA today. When LeBron got in the league, Kobe and the Lakers were in the midst of winning titles. And it was Kobe's game. That is a problem the NBA has. And again, I don't know, like I'm not going to blame LeBron for this, whereas I blame LeBron for a lot of the problems with today's NBA, like load management and how obnoxious the players can be sometimes. And I really do blame LeBron and Durant for a lot of it. I don't blame them for this. But it just kind of feels like these superstars, maybe it's that they make the money too soon. Maybe it's that they don't care enough about winning the title. I mean, Luka Doncic is probably the most polarizing superstar out there. And like, he might be too fat to be that guy. So again, I'm not going to crush the NBA because of the market size that's out there. But I just don't know who the next dominant guy is going to be in the NBA, and they need that guy because LeBron's day is over. Joe Rexroad, Mr. Basketball Benjamin, texted me and said, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, or Anthony Edwards. Heard of them. Now, Jokic is a bad boy. Like, I'm not taking anything away from that. But do you really see Jokic owning the sport a la Larry, Magic, Jordan? Jokic? I don't. No disrespect to Jokic. Anthony Edwards, about 2 years ago, I watched him play, and I'm like, this guy might be the next Michael Jordan. And I really felt that way. Anthony Edwards shoots the ball 8 times in a conference final. Do you think Michael would have ever shot the ball 8 times in a conference final? I don't think Anthony Edwards has that killer instinct in him like Michael Jordan. So I'm not ready to go there with Anthony Edwards. The NBA needs their next Kobe. They need their next LeBron. And I don't know who it's going to be. Couldn't tell you. But they need that guy, or else it's going to be what the NBA was like pre-Bird and Magic, which is tape-delayed NBA Finals. Again, it's never going to be that way, but it might as well be. And boy, Amazon and NBC are going to be mad. Holy crap, if this league goes down the tubes. 615-737-1025. TD Power Hour is next. I got to know what TD thinks of the whole Simmons not showing up for OTAs and not even peeping about it. We'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, live from First Horizon Park on a Throwback Thursday, where the Sounds take on the Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, who, I'm just going to put this out there, TD, stink, just so we get that out of the way at the beginning here.
Yeah, they are not good. Not good at all. And in the meantime, my Mets are up 4-0 over the Dodgers in LA. I can't wait to see Jimmy Wyatt. Won last night it was 6-5 or 6-1, if I'm not mistaken. Good things.
So bad things for the Braves, good things there for the Mets. So I want to start, TD, even though we spent the entire break, you and I, talking about NBA players from the 90s, which is something I could talk about for 10 hours probably.
Was Jordan your favorite?
I love Jordan back in the day.
He wasn't my favorite.
Who was your favorite?
So we're going to go 90s. It was a tie between Dominique Wilkins and Patrick Ewing.
Dominique Wilkins was a bad boy.
Neek used to, I'm a 2-foot jumper because of Neek.
See, you have to remember, because I was born in 89, the first 3 Jordan titles I don't really remember, but I remember the last 3. And Space Jam came out, I think, in 95.
Mm-hmm.
So for like the generation of people like me, Space Jam, that's Bugs Bunny, Michael Jordan teaming up. I think that had an effect on a lot of us.
Yeah, no, I could reason with that. I was a Knicks fan when I was younger, so Bernard King was my favorite player. Then Patrick Ewing, and then eventually it got to Carmelo Anthony. And when they traded Melo, I said I'm done with him.
Were you pro Kobe or anti Kobe?
Initially anti-Kobe. It's weird. Like after he got into that trouble, I started to like him. Not because he got into the trouble, but I just really appreciated his game. And I was like, man, everybody's hating on this dude. I like him, man.
I was always anti-Kobe until like after Shaq left.
Oh, yeah.
So because I was Jordan, and then Kobe and Shaq, and I was rooting for Portland when they lost in 7 games with Scottie Pippen. And I think maybe because Scottie was on that Portland team and I was a Jordan guy, and I didn't know Scottie and Jordan hated each other. Yeah. And then the Sacramento series which ended up being cooked in hindsight was a freaking war between the two.
The Denver series, Denver was, I think they were up 2-0, and then there was a crazy foul called, and then it turned to things.
Now, Jeffrey Simmons, OTA, is not there for the Titans. TD, usually when a guy is not there, it's because there's some sort of contract dispute. He's not happy. There's usually something attached to it. It doesn't seem like that is the case with Simmons. Why is Simmons not there?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's someone who doesn't do the voluntary things. He just hasn't done it since he's been here. I don't think it's a testament to his work ethic or anything like that. He's getting the work in. I thought it was interesting because Devondre Sweat told me that he was going to work with him and his brother Dylan Bradley during the offseason, but Sweat said he didn't work out with Jeff. So I don't know what happened there. But I think normally this is something I would say, hey, no big deal. It is a bit of an issue in this setting that they're in now because their team was 3-14. Jeff didn't have a Pro Bowl level season, and he is the face of the franchise until Cameron Ward takes that over. So it is good for him to be there at the voluntary stuff. Also because of everything that's going on, the team building, right? The focus on and we talked about this, right? The focus on the cutting away the sins, right? Self-inflicted negatives, focusing on cutting away the MEs, the mental errors. There were a lot of times where, because you look at this Titans team, the defense, they didn't give up a lot of yards, but they gave up a lot of points, right? And there were times where you look at the offense, they're right up there with turnovers and negative field, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look, there were a lot of times where the defense came in and they did what Jeffrey Simmons said they set out to do, is be the fire guy. Like, they got to put out the fire. They put the fire out for 2.7 downs, but they got to stop on 3rd down, and he'll get a bad penalty afterward and give them the 1st down, whole new set. Now they could score. And that 3 points goes to 7 points. Those are the types of things, the very things that they're looking to eliminate. And with that being the focus, he being a repeat offender of that, he needs to be there from that perspective to me.
I'm glad you brought up the 3 and 14 angle of this, because it does kind of feel like Simmons is approaching this with the idea of, well, I don't need to be there. And it's like, maybe you don't need to be there, but
optically
your team needs you to be there.
Yeah.
And that bothers me as well, because I'm like, sometimes I kind of feel like Jeff wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. He wants to get paid. He wants to be viewed as the leader. He wants to be a team spokesperson. But with that comes a certain level of responsibility. And by him not being there, it feels to me like he's not meeting it.
Yeah.
And then I wonder too, the Callahan front of this. Like, I believe Brian Callahan and Simmons have a good working relationship. I don't know why I believe that, but I believe that. At the same time, for Callahan to have to get up there and say on one hand, hey, we're going to eliminate the mistakes this year, and this is my path forward on how we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Simmons to say, essentially with his actions, well, that's all good, but I'm going to go do my own thing. And then Callahan has to defend Simmons not being there. It puts Callahan in a tough spot. It's like, is this really transformational? You know, if Jeffrey Simmons isn't going to buy into it. And I just think that, again, all Jeffrey Simmons had to do was come last week to OTAs. That's it. Like, all he's got to do is know the day the media is going to be there, go out there that day, get out on the field for 20 minutes, and call it a day.
Yeah. But here's the good thing about it. 2 weeks from now, we're not even going to be talking about this. That's the good thing about it. And there is time for him to jump into the program and get acclimated and get settled in and get on the same page. Is it the best path? No, not at all. Right? Like, we're going from here to here and he's going this way like this rather than going. But I think he could get there. It's just going to be a little bit longer, right?
If I were to sit down with Jeffrey Simmons and I were to say, okay, give me the why of why you're not there. Like, why did you feel like you didn't need to be out there, even from an optics standpoint? Like, what's the why here? What do you think his answer would be?
I think he trusts in his own work. And like I said, like, his brother is a pretty good trainer. And the Titans, they trust him to do his own work. You heard Brian Callahan said, if there's anybody I don't have to worry about being ready, it's Jeffrey Simmons. But I think he's missing the bigger picture point. In that it's not about whether or not you're going to be ready as much as it's about you setting the tone in this situation that needs a huge tone. So why do you think everybody, because I know you got an issue with Cameron Ward and the confidence and everybody's saying, why do you think everybody is doing that? Because this organization is starving for a leader.
It's almost like we need this, so let's tell ourselves that.
But speaking of that confidence, though, because I heard, was it Monday, you were saying how, you know,
you can be optimistic.
How could he? But listen to me. I'm going to give it to you. Even though he hasn't thrown a pass in the NFL game, as an athlete, right, you build confidence off of your preparation. Why do you think a lot of times, you know, on Fridays, it's for like if they had a good week of practice on Fridays, like everybody's upbeat, everybody's happy because they're like, yo, like, I'm confident because we put the work in to get the result. Now, did they get the result last year? Maybe 3 times. That was it. But typically, as an athlete, the effort, the participation, the preparation, everything that you put in, that builds the confidence. Actually, more than actually going on the field and doing it. And once you go on the field and do it, that just reinforces the confidence. That's how it works.
So I think Marcus had a line like that when he was the quarterback, which was like, he doesn't get nervous because you only get nervous when you're not prepared or something like that. But I think Marcus is a perfect example of a dude that just never really had that confidence. You know, like I
think he had the confidence. It was just never there's other parts that got to come with that confidence, and there were just things that he didn't have. Like, Marcus was a dog, but he wanted to kill him.
So I am optimistic that Cam can go out there and do things early on that gives everybody confidence in him and that gives him confidence in himself. And I'm talking about doing things on the field, you know, really like those joint practices and maybe a preseason game when he gets in, like the true competition. Until then, for me, though, it's just all kind of like telling yourself, oh, this can happen, which I think is more optimism than it is confidence.
No, I'll tell you, it's confidence.
Like
I
Barry
would tell-
Trotz told me one time, because I asked him before they played McDavid, and I was like, what's it like when you've got that guy on your team? Because he coached Ovechkin in Washington. And he was like, there is a feeling when you've got that guy on your team that every single person in the building can have a bad day and he will save you. And I'm not saying that Cam Ward can't be that guy. I am saying, though, I don't think the Titans can have that Ovechkin McDavid feeling about him yet.
Who says they do?
Well, that's confidence.
And there's levels to it. Ovechkin is a supreme elite athlete. That's different, right? And when I say supreme elite athlete, like he's already established, that's a different level of confidence.
He's that dude, and everyone knows it.
What's going on now, that they believe that Cameron is that dude, right? But then they also see the preparation and everything that he's putting in. And I know the 5 a.m. things is not big to you, but it is big to a lot of people in that organization.
It's big to me that he's the one not talking about it.
It's huge that he's not. It's
that
huge.
it's everybody else
but
that's talking about it and not
thing.
him.
Here's the thing. So like, I got a Cam story coming out, and I talked to different people in his family. That's them. That's just who they are. That's who they are. Like, they're people. They're not going to boast or brag about anything. They're not going to do any of that. They're just going to, like, everything is just status quo and it's calm. And that's why this dude is the way he is, man. It's pretty fascinating just watching his interaction with the other the veterans and stuff. Because I was supposed to talk to him last week, and we were about to talk. Sebastian Joseph Day came up and he started trash talking, and Cam trash talking them back, and we had to push it to the next week because they were, you know what I mean? Like, but it's just all like calm, like not excited type of. It's just he's a very even keeled dude. I think that's the best way to put it.
TD is with us. Speaking of Cam Ward, what he saw on the football field out of Cam Ward for the second open OTA ahead of the mandatory minicamp. We'll do that next. We are live from First Horizon Park. Sounds and Stripers tonight, 6:35. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Is getting up at 5 a.m. the norm for you, or getting to work at 5 a.m. the norm for you, or is that just something that you're doing this summer?
It's just my process. It's just how I've always been in college, even to now. And it's really just, how I get everything in, what I need to get in, whether it's film, treatment-wise, just, I got to get everything in to start my day, to end my day, and, by whatever time, you got to get it done.
Does coach ever tell you, go home and go back to sleep? I need you energized?
I'm always energized. I'm playing football, so, I'm doing what I love. Not a lot of people, can do that in this world. So, I'm one of the 1% who's blessed to do it. So, I'm always going to have energy when I'm on the field.
Cam Ward waking up 5 a.m. every morning, or I guess getting to work at 5 a.m., TD.
Yeah, getting to work at 5 a.m., so 3:30 wake up probably.
You think it's 3:30?
I don't know. I know, like, there was a trip when I went to East Baptist Christian College, University, whatever it is, and they woke up at 3:30 a.m. to leave at 5. So I just guessed 3:30.
Chris Sanders and I were talking about this yesterday. My guess is Cam's staying at one of the hotels right by the facility, and he probably wakes up at 4:45, rolls out of bed, or 4:55, rolls out of bed, goes right to the facility, which I got no problem with. I mean, they got all the food there. They got all the go get your lift in, go get your shower on, get to the meetings.
That is what he told me when I talked to him earlier this week. He was like, man, I'm going to pay for anything. I got the food right here. I just bring that from, because, you could take the to-go boxes and you could bring the Gatorades or Powerades, whatever you drink, and it's all provided for you.
That being said, how do you look on the football field this week at OTAs?
I will say this, because I was scheduled to speak to him after practice, right? And so, like, the first he started out the 7-on-7 period, and I was like, dang, I need this guy to turn it around, because I wanted him to be, like, upbeat afterward. He had a rough start. He was on – I don't remember if it was Van Jefferson or Io Manor. I think it was Jefferson. They tried to connect on the curl route. Jefferson ran the curl. The receiver ran the curl. Cam threw it outside of him. So I think he thought it was a different route. And I remember the receiver running back, and he's like, my bad. So I know that, well, I'm pretty sure that was on Cam. He tends to take the blame for everything, but I'm pretty sure that one was on him. Then he had another one actually on a similar route to Colton Dow, and he tried to get it in there, and the safety came down, and Dow and the safety collided, and it was incomplete. But then he started to get a little hot. And he and Restrepo connected a couple times for I know fans want to know about that. There was one, like, he shot it right into a spot, and it was just before Restrepo got in the window, but he got in the window and he snapped it. And remember, so this was third down period they were working on. So there's new things that they're going over offensively, but then also you're seeing different things defensively, like Denard Wilson started to send the blitz a few more times and things like that. So he continued to throw in between the hashes. There were a couple throws where I'm like, man, that dude is living dangerously. And that is the Cam Ward experience. You're going to have those. I think he had a solid day. Nothing like overly spectacular, but, there were some good shots. But I want to say this. Will Levis had a nice shot to who was it?
DK?
No, it might have been DK or it might have been Oliver. I have to go back to my notes. But it was a nice shot. I think it was Bryce Oliver, actually. And he went up and he snatched the ball over one of the lower tier corners. Really nice ball on a fade. So I want to get the Levis shout out in there too, because Levis he's doing what he needs to do to stay the course. And we know it's not a true competition, but it'll be interesting seeing how he continues to do.
What do you think the Titans' plan for Levis is?
Honestly, I think right now their plan is to just showcase him as much as possible. And that's not to trade him necessarily, just to, hey, look, this dude could play, right? And then eventually maybe they do trade him, but I don't think he's a bad fallback option as your backup quarterback, right? And the thing is, I just wonder how he would play in this situation, right? Like, I wonder if he would come in and press too much, or I wonder if he'll come in and just execute the offense, because one of the things that he said, like, there's not really as much pressure on him, so we'll see.
When it comes to Levis, it's like if they didn't think that Levis could be on the team, then he would already be gone. Like, if they thought that, Levis was going to be a distraction or was going to cry about not them drafting Cam, then Levis would have already been gone. if they wanted to trade him, like if they were like, hey, we want to just get something for him and move on, he'd already be gone because they would have made that move prior to free agency opening up. So they didn't do that. In fact, they were adamant that they were not interested in dealing Will Levis. I mean, Jim Wyatt had a story up on the team's website of Chad Brinker saying, we haven't entertained the idea of getting rid of Levis. They said after the draft, we didn't talk to anybody about getting rid of Levis. But then I'm trying to figure out, okay, so are you gassing him up now, hoping that he can get you a pick? Because I don't think after the season he had, even if he lights it up in the preseason against second and third teamers, I don't think teams in the NFL are going to offer much in exchange for Will Levis. I mean, Joe Milton had as good of a game as you could have, you know, in that kind of showcasing for something. And he only went for a fifth and brought a seventh back. So I'm like, okay, there's not much upside in a Levis trade, even if he does play well. So is the plan going to be 3 quarterbacks, or is the plan going to be, you know, to gas up Levis and trade him for whatever they can get, you know, or is there just not a plan and, hey, we'll coach him every day and go from there?
I think you could afford, like, who's going to claim Brandon Allen? Who's going to claim Tim Boyle, right? Like,
well, nobody's claiming Tim Boyle. I mean, he's,
yeah. But see, you could put those guys on the practice squad is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? You could always do that. And then if that doesn't work out, you always got Old Faithful. You know what I mean? You go ahead and give Trevor Siemian a call, and he'll come. He's probably in Brentwood or Franklin somewhere anyway. You know what I mean? And he'll come running in, and you have instantly an emergency backup quarterback if you need it.
So do you think you could see the Titans with Will Levis on the team for the next 2 years? Because in a perfect world, they don't want him to play.
Right.
So for 2 years, Levis is around, Levis is improving, Levis is out there performing in the preseason or something, and the Titans are cool with 2 years of that, and then he goes on his way? Or do you think at some point the Titans would look to move him?
Good question. I don't know. I think they'll look to move him eventually. This upcoming offseason, I think they could look to move him. But again, it's going to depend on, okay, how does Cameron Ward look? And then also, what are you doing at backup? I think to have Levis as your backup the next 2 years is not a bad situation.
Well, the Texans have gone the route with Davis Mills if he's the backup. And then they signed Davis Mills to an extension to stay as the backup. And so in theory, the Titans could do that. But Levis
ain't doing that.
Levis just doesn't profile as a backup to me, not because I don't think that he has the attitude to do it. I think he does have the right attitude. I think if Levis knew, like, hey, I'm a backup and I signed for this, kind of like Zach Wilson signed to be a backup in Miami, and I think he could do it. But when I think of a backup quarterback, I think of a guy that comes in and really doesn't put the ball in harm's way. And when I think of Levis, I think of a guy who comes in and immediately puts the ball in harm's way.
And that's the thing I'm curious about. Like, will he press, right? Because, like, was his previous pressing because he felt the weight of, hey, look, here are the keys, drive the car, don't crash it? Being as though that car is taken away now, I wonder if he'll still play the same. You know what I mean? And that's sometimes, like, you go through a humiliating experience and you come out on the other side of that a better person, right? And in this case, maybe he comes out a better quarterback after going through, hey, look, man, like, they snatched the rug from under me. I didn't help secure it, but they snatched it from under me. I know some things I got to work on. Let me change it up. Boom, boom, which he did, working with Jordan Palmer. And maybe he comes back a different guy. I don't know.
I would tell you this. When I sat down with Levis to the Super Bowl, not this past year, but the year before that, and I mean, I sat down with him for like 15 minutes. And I'm telling you, and I'm sure you've had similar experiences, but like, I could feel how tight he was wound. Like, I could feel it. Like, I almost wanted to be like, hey, man, like, yeah, like, you know, we were in Las Vegas. I'm going to be like, you know, those gummies are legal here. Like, you might want to take a couple. I remember one time he ran out on the practice field. This might have been with his rookie year or whatever. And he like downed 2 5-hour energies and threw them in the trash. And I saw that. And then after sitting down with him and seeing how wound tight he was, I really wanted to be like, hey, dude, like, you need to chill out a little bit. Yeah. You know, there was a game his rookie year at Tampa Bay where they got down 2 scores and he threw a YOLO ball and it didn't get intercepted. But as soon as he threw that, Tim Kelly immediately starts calling bubble screens. And I realized it watching the film back that they did that because Tim Kelly's like, if we don't, this kid is going to throw the game to the other team if we don't take the decision to throw it down the field away from
Wasn't that one dropped by the safety or something like that?
I think so. I mean, it was like an arm punt.
Yeah.
And they ended up not intercepting it. And the next play was like an 18-yard bubble screen to Kyle Phillips because it was like, okay, we're taking this. Because if you remember the week before at Pittsburgh, Levis on that drive, he threw like 6 YOLO balls being like, well, I got to get it back here.
One of them was specifically dictated to him to throw it, though. Like, he had an alert. They had an alert put in where if Burks was one-on-one, didn't matter who the corner was.
That was the 4th down play, right?
Yeah. Because Phillips came open underneath. He and Chig ran. And it's interesting because they have that same, actually come to think of it, they have the same pattern combo in this offense as they did, as Chig and Kyle Phillips did in that one. So.
Well, you know what Floyd used to tell me? He said everybody can have different schemes, but there's only 4 directions you can run in. There's forward, to the left, to the right, and backwards.
Yeah.
And
but
so,
it was like the way that it was set up, like the layered routes and stuff. It was interesting.
We'll hit your phones for TD at the end of the hour, 615-737-1025. Now, we've talked about Simmons, Ward, and Levis. Let's talk about everybody else, how they've looked so far out there at OTAs. We'll do that with TD next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
When you have somebody with his kind of confidence coming in, is it tough to tell when something's clicking for him since the confidence was already baseline, or can you kind of see a difference in it?
No, you can see he asks really good questions. He understands when he makes a mistake, which they all make plenty, and we have the conversations about it. He's got a humility about him, so he knows when it's time to step back and try to get better and see where he can do things differently. And then there's the moment when the moment comes when he's like, I'm going to make this throw, and he makes it. So there's a balance, but he understands that when it's time to learn and when to take a step back from the confidence part of it and where can he improve. And that part's been good to see.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about Cam Ward. But TD, I want to know about some of the guys other than Cam Ward. Kind of give me who has shown out so far at Titans OTAs. There's only been 2 that have been open. Next week will be the mandatory minicamp out there. We'll probably see a lot more. But who has impressed you so far, and who maybe could you say I want to see a little bit more from?
Well, I'll say this, man. I love the urgency that Ridley practices with, and it's almost like he has I don't want to say like a new energy, but you could tell like he's charged up coming into this year. And I get it, right? You're in year 2 after being in a place for the first time, so that's going to happen. But I mean, if you talk about guys, Cody Barton, he and Xavier Woods, like those dudes are like traffic cops, man. Like they talk and they're directing stuff, and it's been impressive seeing that. I know Denard Wilson, he wants, as he calls, obnoxious communication, and you're getting that from 2 guys that are brand new to the team.
Mm-hmm.
Femi Oladejo had a good couple. Take it for what it's worth. Obviously, no pads on, but he had he talked some trash to Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, who was one of the guys that a lot of people think has a good shot at making the roster, right? He was talking trash to him, and he bucked at him and made him false start. And then later in practice, he came around off of the edge and he flushed the quarterback out. It would have been a sack.
Mm-hmm.
He had that. And then even against J.C. Latham, he got a really good – he used like a jump cross chop. And he was able to get around Latham. But this is an example of where I think that lost weight is helping Latham, because he did get around him, but Latham was able to reset and drop back a little bit further and make the path to Cam Ward in this case a little bit longer. And Cam just kind of stepped up and flushed out of the pocket and threw across his body to Shimere Dike for a first down in that third down period. So those 4 guys jump out to me just as, for different reasons. I'm trying to think of who else. None of the tight ends have really stood out. Gunnar Helm is a guy I was really looking forward to seeing, but I've somewhat forgotten about looking for him because it just hasn't really happened. But I know at some point he's going to, do it. Alec Manor, for sure. It's not always making catches as much as it's the way he runs his routes. And it's funny because we were at Ridley's camp and we were talking, and I told him straight up, because he was like, man, I love watching this guy practice and learn a lot. I said, listen, I've never seen a receiver practice with more urgency than him. And I'm like, Elliot, Steve Smith Sr., Alshon Jeffrey, Anquan Bolden, a lot of names that I've seen, and there are more. Torrey Smith, Nelson Aguilar. There's a lot of guys that I've seen, but watching the way he practices is a different sense of urgency.
I do want to go with Ridley for a second here for one specific reason. I think Ridley, to me, I'm fascinated by him. He seems like a really complex dude, and he made some plays last year. No doubt about it. He's got game. He's good. I'm not questioning that. I'm not. Yeah. Jacksonville probably makes the playoffs the year before if Ridley catches the ball that Trevor Lawrence basically laid in his hands in that Week 17 game against the Titans, and he dropped that one. Then in Atlanta, there was the mental health break that he took, and there was the gambling suspension that Calvin Ridley got, which maybe kind of changed how I thought about him without. But then you brought up the urgency that he plays with, and I just hear the way he talks about it. Like, he sounds like a guy who genuinely wants to be a part of the solution in terms of turning the Titans around.
You know, he told me, you know, in that the 4-H's, I asked him about that, and he was like, "Yo, man, like, I really opened up, and some of us, we cried as we were, you know." So even from that perspective, you're seeing like a really sharp approach to it. I hope he has a big year, you know, just for his sake, and obviously that's good for business. You know what I mean? But I do hope he's able to put some things together.
What do you think about the rookie receivers? You brought up Io Manor.
Yeah.
What about DK? I keep seeing DK's name pop up a lot.
Yeah, well, there was, as you saw me scrolling through some of these things on Twitter, there was a video they posted today, maybe about 45 minutes ago, where DK in the corner of the end zone, Cameron Ward found him for a touchdown. Xavier Woods was trying to swing down on it, but didn't get there in time. So I like DK a lot. I like the speed aspect of. No, I'm not gonna say I like him a lot. I like what I've seen from just the speed aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Those 5 a.m. meetings, I talked to him about that, and he's like, you know, I feel prepared, so I'm confident when I'm on the field and comfortable, and that's allowed me to play fast. Which a lot of times you see like those guys that are fast in college and at the combine, etc. When it gets to the NFL field, it slows down because there's so much they're thinking about, and that preparation is helping them in that case. So we'll see how he continues. For me, like, I don't know, like if I'm Nick Holtz, I'm dialing up at least 2 or 3 of those deep over routes to him per period. You know what I mean? Because I just want to see him run and see him, you know, catch the ball at the opposite hash and take off. So you got those.
What do we think about the running game? I know there's really not a lot you can take away from the running game at this point, but the backs themselves, what do you think so far?
Tajay Spears looks faster to me, but again, no pads on, so it's, you know, take it for what it's worth. Even Julius Chestnut, he had a run last week, you know, a little move to freeze up the defender, and then he did another inside out type of move, and he got to the sideline and he took off. I think the running game is going to be solid. I mean, it was good last year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? With Tony Pollard on the bum foot, it was still good. So I think they'll be fine. You have that two-headed monster, but I really want to see, you know, they bring in Khalil Mullins. I want to see how much of a hammer he could be. Like, people forget, like, this dude's 225 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, he's not little. He's a big back, you know? So it's going to be interesting seeing the third wheel, who takes that.
Do you think that with Mullings that they drafted him to be that short yardage thumper, or do you think they drafted him because he did play linebacker at Michigan to be a special teams player who can really pop somebody, you know, whether it's on kickoff coverage, punt coverage, something like that?
It's a combination. Here's the thing. I think he could probably settle into a little bit of a higher end Hassan Haskins, who, if you remember, like, he was that special teams dude for them. They would bring him in, you know, he's another big back, but they would bring him in and didn't always, you know, convert in the short yardage stuff. But I think that's kind of the vision they have for Mullen.
All right, let's hit your phones for TD as we always do. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number, 615-737-1025, live from First Horizon Park tonight. The Sounds and the Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Braves, 6:35 first pitch on a throwback Thursday at Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company live out of First Horizon Park. Sounds tonight. Gwinnett Striper, 635. TD Power Hour. Teron Davenport with us from ESPN. By the way, before we get to the phones, I do want to mention TD will be having a very special Father's Day story that will be dropping at ESPN.com. Do we just want to leave it at that?
Yeah, we can leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Be looking for that on Father's Day. Let's go to your phones, unless you have a thought.
To the phone.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Blair is going to kick us off here. Blair, you're on with TD. Go ahead.
Hey, Teron, it's Blair Durham. How you doing, man?
Oh, my guy, man. How are you?
I'm well. So I've got an off-the-wall question. Of the current rookies on the roster, who would be the best fit for the Olympic flag football team?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. I would say, that's a good question. I would say Chimere DK. No, I'm going Restrepo. Because that short area quickness that he has, I would go with Restrepo. Who would you go with?
Probably DK.
Yeah, because of the speed, right? 4.3. Yeah. No, that's definitely, and that was my first pick. But yeah, I'll say Restrepo.
Well, there are a bunch of Titans fans that are happy that's your answer. I can guarantee you that.
I tell you that right now.
Restrepo he's definitely loved in the city,
Blair.
man. Appreciate you, Blair.
I do wonder this, though. I saw somebody say they were like, I actually cover flag football, and I am a big NFL fan. And I am telling you, the guys that play flag football right now would goose the guys that currently play in the NFL.
It's a different game.
Do you think that like when 2028 comes around, that it will be so obvious that like, hey, this guy you've never heard of out in San Diego is just going to mop the floor with Tyreek Hill?
I wouldn't be surprised because it's like I said, it's a different game. Me personally, I'm not for NFL guys getting involved with that, man. Like, I'm old enough to remember Robert Edwards, out of Georgia, the New England Patriots running back, and he had a pretty promising rookie year. And then at the Pro Bowl, they had like a flag football type thing on the beach, and he tore his knee every which way possible, and no more. So to me, nah.
My big thing with the flag football is I just don't think it's going to have the impact that the owners think it's going to have. Like, I think they think this is like Jordan and Magic and Barkley and Bird going to Barcelona, and I just don't think that's going to be the case.
Because it's just not the same game. And even international basketball is not the same game, but it's a pretty good resemblance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the other thing too, and again, I don't mean to be mean, but I also kind of think like Europeans just really don't care about the NFL. Like, I know that they sell out the tickets when they go there, but it's like they run polls, like people in London, like, do you actually care about the NFL? And they're like, no. They're like, the game's too boring. One texter says, TD, what do you make of the battle for the back end of the wide receiver position?
That's why I asked Callahan about that dedicated slot position, if that's something they're moving away from. Because if it is, then that's really going to make it even harder for your Mason Kinseys and Xavier Restrepos. But I think the battle I like it. I mean, you got Bryce Oliver. I forgot about Colton Dow, and he had a pretty solid day last week or earlier this week. So you got those guys. Prochet, he brings the return aspect. Obviously, Chimere DK. I mean, those guys make the roster, but I think DK and Ayamana are on like two different levels as far as like where they're ranked. I think Ayamana is a legit threat to start, where I think he could be the starting X receiver for you. And then, look, man, you still got Traylon Burks, too. And I know that's a name that just brings out a lot of venom from Titans fans, but you still got him out there. If he can stay healthy, we'll see. But me personally, I throw all expectation and optimism out of the window with him. He's just, okay, well, let's see how it works.
I almost wonder, too, like, how many of these guys are going to separate on special teams? Colton Dow's an example. He was, I don't want to say an ace on special teams.
Bryce Oliver.
But he really, at the end of that rookie year before he tore his ACL at Houston, Colton Dow was becoming a guy that they could really rely on special teams. And we, I think, have been through it enough to know whether it was Craig Ackerman or Colt Anderson, Like, we know that bad special teams will absolutely ruin a game for you or a season for you. So I look at those guys as much as anything like, okay, how are you going to make it or are you not going to make it? One texter says, TD, how are the Titans going to generate pass rush this season? They lose Harold Landry. They bring in Oladejo and Draymond Jones, but is that enough?
That is a good question. And that was kind of the theme when I talked to Ben Bloom, the outside backers coach, and Tracy Rocker, the D-line coach. And it's really about the way they're looking at it. It's all about being more coordinated as a pass rush group. And so was one of the things in my notes from practice earlier this week is you see the groups working together a little bit more, and they're working on different things just as far as to make sure that rush is coordinated, whether it's twists, games, or even making sure that the outside backers aren't too deep when they run the arch. And because if they get too deep, I actually explained it earlier, right? When J.C. Latham was able to recover and wash Oladejo down, Ward was able to step up and flush out of the pocket. You don't want that window to be created. So that's a part of a tiered pass rush. So you do have that they're working on. And it's also a matter of, like with Oladejo and some of the other outside guys, is making sure that they're able to rush with power, speed to power, speed off the edge, and have counters from these moves. So they want to have a counter to their main move to be able to get to the quarterback faster. That's essentially what it boils down to. Finishing the deal as opposed to, how many missed sacks they had last year.
One texter says, TD, what's more important, Brownlee or Baker solidifying a starting role, or Cedric Gray and James Williams doing the same at inside backer?
Yeah, well, you don't want Baker to solidify a starting role because that'll mean that Jarius Sneed isn't out there. You know what I mean? Brownlee right now, I think.
I figured he already solidified.
That's it. That was a part of why they were able to part ways with Cheeto Awuzie. So yeah, I would say probably Gray or Williams. I think they're going to continue to rotate those guys in. I will say, just watching Cedric Gray this year, you could tell he's a lot more comfortable. Initially, man, like he was struggling. He couldn't play fast. Everything was just, all a whirlwind. Rookie green dot, like that was a tough situation for him. So I want to see how he comes along. Don't discount Otis Reese though, right? And they got the rookie. I always struggle to pronounce his name. Benda, I think it's Gbenda. He's all right, and he's becoming like a real protege of Cody Barton. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what young player steps up. There's like 3 or 4 options.
So this past week in Louisville, baseball was in town, and I go way back with the athletic director there, and we were talking about Brownlee, and I was saying to him, I was like, Brownlee had a really good rookie season. I said he gets a little handsy sometimes, and he's going to start to get a reputation around the league of being a little too handsy, and they're going to start calling that. And he looked at me and goes, oh, yeah. He said that the problem that they had at Louisville with Brownlee was that he was too physical, not the other way around. He was like, he's crazy in the good way. But he's like, he wants up in somebody's face. And James Foster wrote a piece for Kaharski where he kind of broke down the film of Brownlee's rookie year. And he went back to those Justin Jefferson penalties. And I was watching them. And what James Foster really wrote was kind of along the lines of, these are kind of 50-50 calls here that are being called on Brownlee. And I'm like, Brownlee has to learn that in 3 years, if he's still starting in the NFL, he probably will get 50% of the 50-50 calls.
Yeah.
But at this point, when you're matched up on Justin Jefferson, you're not going to get that call.
Nope.
And that's going to be the thing that I'm going to be fascinated to see, because Denard Wilson talked about, hey, if we commit penalties on third down, we're just going to kill ourselves. You can't put yourself in that position where it's that close.
You got to play your game, right? Because also, like, with him, like that's the way he defends. So would you rather him have a 50-50 chance of giving up the penalty by playing his game, or increase the chance of Justin Jefferson taking it to the house by him not?
Isn't that the game within the game, though?
Exactly.
Which is like, hey, you need to learn how to do this for 2 years. And then after that, do whatever you want. But you have to become a made man in the mafia before they give you that one way or another. One texter says, is Will Levis getting any first-team reps? And if so, how is he looking? Or do you think there's any shot that he's really just going up against second and third teamers and dominating?
Yeah, so there isn't necessarily first team, second team, third team right now. Brian Callahan was telling the truth when he said that. I've seen Levis start some periods. I've seen Brandon Allen start some. Seen Cam Ward start some too. So he's going against and going with the what you are the top guys. Like he's on the field with Ridley at times. He's throwing the ball, and Brownlee is out there, and Xavier Woods is out there, and Cody Barton is. So I guess you could say, quotation mark, he's getting first team reps. I've seen him just, he's been solid. Everybody's been, quarterback. Well, those two have been solid.
Zach says, what are your initial impressions of Dan Moore Jr.?
I don't watch too much of the offensive line
with no pads.
Yeah. I watched him in drill work. He seems solid there. But it's too early for me to say, like, I have an impression, so to speak.
I will say this. I think you can tell terrible without the pads on, because there are two guys that stand out without the pads. I remember in 2021, I went up to Joe at practice, and this was before they put the pads on. So, like, how they practice for like a week before they put the pads on? This might have been the second or third practice. And I went to Joe, and I was like, Joe, I think Dylan Radin sucks. And Joe was like, they haven't even put the pads on. What do you mean? They haven't even done it. And then Andre Dillard in OTAs a couple of years ago was kind of legendary with just how bad Arden Key was beating him. So if Dan Moore has not done that, at least he's passed the first test.
Yeah. The first, he got past the first wave. I think that's good.
And then we'll see what happens when they put the pads on.
Yep.
Talking with TD is out. And again, be looking for that Father's Day story that is coming out from TD at ESPN. As always, TD, good to see you. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. Good to be seen.
So it's game one of the NBA Finals. And I have a basketball take that I have got to get off my chest. And we will do that coming up next. We are live from First Horizon Park, where, again, the Sounds are taking on the Gwinnett Stripers tonight at 6:35. It's Stillman and Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. We are live at First Horizon Park, where the Sounds take on the Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Braves, 6:35 first pitch today. So I did this last week when I got all mad about entitlement in sports and teams that win a little bit but don't win the whole championship and then blow their operation up, and just how stupid I think some of that is. And people said, hey, we like a nice little Jared Stillman sports lecture. I'm sure other people didn't like it. And I don't know if this is going to become an every Thursday thing or not, but Reed, it's time for another lecture. I got to get it off my chest.
I'll be taking notes.
Okay. There is going to be, and there already has been, a lot of talk about the NBA Finals TV ratings with two small market teams, small market Indiana and small market OKC. And about, the ratings are going to be so low. Oh, it's so boring with the teams that are in there. And let me say this. I expect that there will be bad TV ratings. And I expect that people will bemoan the fact that the Lakers aren't in it, or that New York's not in it, or that Boston's not in it. But let me just ask this question. Why do we care about this? Why does it matter to you that small market Indiana is taking on small market OKC? And again, I think when we talk about small markets, what we're really saying, forget about the market size. What we're really saying is not popular Indiana versus not popular OKC. Because Pittsburgh is a small market, and yet the Steelers draw pretty well. South Bend, Indiana, small market, Notre Dame does okay. So it's really just, they're not popular franchises. Who cares? If you like basketball and you want to see who the best of the best is, then why do you care if other people other than you watch the games? Why do you care? Oh, well, a lot of people aren't going to watch basketball tonight. Okay, are you going to watch basketball? Do you want to watch basketball? Do you not want to watch basketball? And the other thing is, where did the infatuation with big markets come from? When did this start? Like in the 1980s, for instance, did people sit there and say, oh no, Detroit and the Pistons beat the Celtics. Oh God, Boston. Oh God, Boston didn't make it. I don't think so. Like, do you sit there and say, hey, I'm only going to watch if New York is in there? Like, again, I don't care who ends up making it to the college football playoff. I'm going to watch the championship game. Arizona State. Again, we're talking about popular teams here. And the college football playoff was littered with Tennessee and Ohio State and Texas and Notre Dame. But let me say this. Arizona State, Texas played a great game. I watched it. I was in. I forget who the Arizona State quarterback is. It doesn't matter. It was a good game. Did we have a problem? You people that are all mad about market size in the NBA, did you have a problem with Michael Jordan playing Utah because Utah was a small market? Or are you like me and you look back on that when I was 8, 9 years old watching Jordan play at the end, and I remember how jazzed up. I remember swimming at the pool at my grandmother's condo the night before Game 6 when Jordan held his follow-through. And I remember it was like 2 p.m. It was June. I'm 9 years old. I'm in the pool like any other 9-year-old. And I'm sitting there telling my grandmother, man, I can't wait for the basketball game tonight. I didn't have a problem with it because it was Utah. Did anybody have a problem when San Antonio would make it to the finals with Duncan and they play LeBron? And speaking of LeBron, did anybody have a problem with LeBron at Cleveland? So I don't know where this all started. I have an idea. My theory is that this all started because I think the national media kind of stinks. I think the national sports media is really more political than it is meritocracy. I don't think that they go and say, let's go get the best guys across the country and stick them on TV anymore. I think it's let's get the guys that kiss the boss's ass. And that's how you end up with Max Kellerman on television instead of people that are good. And what's happened is, unlike the old days, Around the Horn just went away. I thought Around the Horn was a perfect, sports media show for 25 years where there were opinions, but they were informed opinions. They talked all the sports, including hockey and baseball and everything else. And it's going to go away, and they're going to replace it with a show that talks, NBA and only the 3 teams in the NBA and football. The days of Jim Rome doing things the Jim Rome way, those days are over. So what's happened now is people listen to local sports radio. People that live in New York and live in LA and live in Chicago, they listen to the local sports radio because the national guys, for the most part, I think kind of stink. And that's why you can't turn on the TV and go 5 minutes without hearing talk about the Knicks coaching search, because everybody who works at ESPN and the executives at ESPN all live in New York. So they think because they care about the Knicks, because they live in New York, that everybody else around the country cares about New York and the New York Knicks. And I'm here to tell you, the people in St. Louis, Missouri do not care about the New York Knicks coaching search. So they think everybody wants to talk Knicks because they want to talk Knicks, and I just don't think that's the case. Now, I'm not excusing the NBA because the NBA has problems. The NBA stars are obnoxious with load management and some of the fights they pick, Draymond Green and some of his stuff, it's obnoxious. Tyrese Haliburton's dad's out there on the court. Ja Morant, is getting suspended, and then he's out there doing gun celebrations. Like, the NBA's got problems. But TV ratings are not a problem that should affect a basketball fan or a sports fan from watching the game. And when it comes to, again, this idea that it's not a large market team or it's not a popular team, I have to ask, when did we start caring about this? Like, when did this become a thing that you cared about? When did it matter to you that it was the New York Knicks and not the Indiana Pacers who beat the New York Knicks, who belong in the NBA Finals? Now, I do not want to confuse this with, I'm not sure how much I care about the NBA Finals, but at the same time, I'm not sure I would have cared about the NBA Finals much more, even if New York was in it. And again, those are the problems with the NBA, I think, that need to be addressed. But the idea of 2 small market teams playing each other, and because they're 2 small market teams, oh, it's awful. Who cares? Give me a break. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous if you decide not to watch the game because OKC and Indiana are small markets, but you would watch if it were the Knicks. And when it comes to the TV ratings, because they're going to be bad, how do the NBA's TV ratings affect you? How do they affect you? And the answer is they don't. So all the hubbub's going to be made tomorrow this time, because that's when the ratings will come out, about Game 1 ratings. Lowest on record other than the COVID year since 2013, something like that. Again, who cares? Either you want to watch it or you don't want to watch it. Am I going to watch it? I don't know. But at the same time, I know I'm not choosing whether or not to watch the game based upon whether or not the TV ratings are going to be good. I don't care what everybody else is doing. I'll do what I want to do. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, I do have a theory when it comes to the NBA. And again, it comes to the way that the national media approaches sports, specifically ESPN, that I want to get to. And we'll do that next on top of your phone. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company, live from First Horizon Park, 1025, 106 for the game.
It's one thing I really admire about the NFL. I mean, if we were going into a Super Bowl and it was Packers against Steelers, you guys would be celebrating that. Those would be storied franchises. People wouldn't be talking about, the fact that Pittsburgh is a small market. So in fact, I'm happy whatever team ends up in the finals, but it's been intentional from our standpoint to create a system, a collective bargaining agreement that allows more teams to compete. And just by way of background, we're going to have to go through a process of getting to the point where people are accustomed to tuning into the finals because it's the two teams that deserve to be there, and it's the best basketball. Similar to, again, with the Super Bowl, if I asked somebody if they were going to watch the Super Bowl, they wouldn't say who's playing. It's a national holiday, and now that's nirvana.
That's the goal.
I'm not saying we're anywhere close to that yet. There's still, if the Knicks are in the finals, there's a segment of our fan base that's going to watch that may not watch if it's other teams. But my job is to get people to love and follow this game, and so that if you're a huge basketball fan, you should want to tune into the finals because that's the best basketball.
There you go. That was Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA on Fox Sports 1, talking about the two small market teams. And throw the NFL out of this, because the NFL will watch Cincinnati play the Rams and the Super Bowl, and neither team is very popular. We'll watch anybody play. It doesn't matter. You know, I heard Mike Greenberg do an interview a couple of years ago when he was asked about the choices that they have on ESPN, and he goes, take the least popular football team. He goes, Tennessee, Jacksonville. And a story surrounding Jacksonville or Tennessee is going to be a bigger deal than any story on any other sport. So take that aside. When it comes to basketball and the NBA final, I have a theory. And I have no way to prove this theory. I think Major League Baseball is more popular than the NBA. Forget about the NFL and forget about college football, because the NFL is number one and it's not close. And college football is number two, and that is not close. So put those to the side. You know, again, when Adam Silver is like, if we had Pittsburgh versus Green Bay, everybody would be excited about it. And yeah, well, that's the NFL. Put that aside. You're not going to be the NFL. You're not going to compete with the NFL. Don't try to compete with the NFL. It's not going to happen. But I think everybody believes that the NBA is more popular than baseball. And I've been on this for a while, but now I feel like I really feel confident that baseball, Major League Baseball, is more popular than the NBA. And there's no way to prove this. For instance, we could take the championship ratings, we could take the World Series, and we could say the World Series is outperformed over the last 5 years or the last 3 years or whatever it is. The World Series has outperformed the NBA Finals by about 400,000 viewers a game. So baseball's more popular. But again, when doing that, we have to analyze the fact that the Yankees played the Dodgers, and so that's a big deal. But I just think baseball had some serious problems post-steroid era. They had a star problem in baseball. And I remember when I first started here in 2015, and God bless him, and I love George Plaster with all my heart. But there was sort of this, I remember the day of the All-Star game, George had a rant about people that were crapping on baseball because baseball was just declining constantly. And his rant was, baseball is still a great game. And I think baseball looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we're making a ton of money and we're, still selling tickets. So who cares if all these young people don't care about us? But baseball has changed. They've put in a pitch clock. You don't go to the bullpen every 25 seconds. You can't throw over to first base every 5 minutes. There's certain rules. Designated hitters. Nobody wants to watch the pitcher hit. And because of that, and the development of some stars, Ohtani, Aaron Judge, and some other guys, I think baseball's starting to maybe tread water or head in the right direction. I don't want to say, baseball's on the ascent, because I don't think it is. The WNBA is on the ascent. And the WNBA is on the ascent because of one person. That's Caitlin Clark. But I think baseball is doing okay right now. The NBA, I think, is in serious trouble. And again, I think like baseball, it was kind of the arrogance of the sport and the money that they were making and the players themselves that have allowed this to happen. The moment for me where I feel like the NBA started to fall apart was when Kevin Durant decided to go to Golden State at the end of 2016. If you go back to those 2016 NBA Finals, that was LeBron versus Golden State 2.0. Remember, the first time Kyrie Irving got hurt and Kevin Love got hurt, so it was LeBron and 4 other bums versus Golden State, and they got beaten in 6 games. The next year, Kyrie's healthy, Kevin Love's healthy, and that series averaged 20 million viewers. It went to 7 games, and I mean, it was competitive basketball with so much on the line. But once Kevin Durant went to Golden State, it kind of ruined the rest of that era of basketball. We all knew who was going to win. The NBA had to give money back and had to lower the salary cap because they had to give money back to the TV partners because there weren't enough playoff games because Golden State was sweeping everybody. And so when Adam Silver talks about, I want competitive teams, and that's what the CBA, he's trying to keep Kevin Durant from ruining the sport again. I mean, I'll never forget in 2019 how it was more impactful as to what was going to happen after the season about who was going to go where as far as free agency was concerned than what was actually going on during the season. And since then, I feel like the NBA has yet to pick it back up. Again, we're talking about 20 million viewers a game for the NBA Finals in 2016. Last year, Boston, Dallas, these are not small markets. Boston and Dallas, 11 million viewers a game. That's losing half the audience. And I know, again, there's the faction out there that will say, well, the NBA went woke. That's what happened to the NBA. And I'm like, you know what? People really don't care that much. Like, yeah, people don't want to be told, but at the same time, like, it's not like when you watch the NBA that you can't. It's not like it's a political advertisement. I'm sorry, it's not. So if I go back 10 years, the World Series in baseball was averaging 14.5 million viewers. Last year, the World Series averaged 15 million viewers. So over the last 10 years, even though there are more options now, as far as streaming services and everything else to be able to watch whatever you want to watch, baseball has not really lost a lot of their audience. Basketball, meanwhile, has lost almost half of its audience. And again, I don't care what the TV ratings are when it comes to whether or not I'm going to watch the game. But again, this is just a theory that I have, and it may be proven incorrect. Caroline and I were talking about this on Sirius earlier today, and I said, I believe that more people across the country believe that, or more people across the country would identify as a Major League Baseball fan over an NBA fan. Now, I think that, again, there are more people that, if you were to say, what's your favorite sport? More people would say NFL 1 and NBA might be 2. But if you were to take the NFL and college football out of it, you were to survey the entire country, and you were to say Major League Baseball or the NBA, in 2025, I think you're going to get more votes for Major League Baseball. That's just my theory. Again, there's no exact number here that would prove one or the other. I'm not going with all-star game ratings. Both sports all-star games stink. I'm not going with World Series ratings because some years you get a good matchup, some years you get a bad matchup. Same with the NBA Finals. And let's not forget either, the World Series competes with football. There is no football on tonight. But there's something that's wrong with the NBA. And I think that it's a lack of likable stars. Jordan, likable. WNBA is getting ratings. Why? Caitlin Clark, likable. That's just my theory, and I guess I'm sticking to it. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on this if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Plus, I do have one NBA final thought that I want to get off my chest, then we'll get to your phones. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
Tyrese Haliburton, it's well publicized at this point, named the most overrated player in the NBA by his peers in a poll that The Athletic did before the playoffs. And we've seen his run here and some of the shots that he's made, just some of the moments that he's had. It's been unbelievable. How do you kind of put into words the postseason that he's had and what that's done for him in terms of the way that he's viewed and kind of his star power moving forward here?
So you mean to tell me that all the people who voted, it was only maybe 13 players, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't like an overwhelming margin. But all the people who voted Tyrese Haliburton to be the most overrated player, all that meant was, I don't like Tyrese Haliburton busting my ass. I don't like his get down. I don't like the way that he moves. You think they feel, man, you know what? He's a great player. Have you met NBA players? Have you met athletes? These dudes are prideful. These dudes are competitive as hell and haters and everything else, right? I think it's a natural human thing. But as far as Tyrese himself, so much of the conversation with him has been about his daddy doing the stuff that his daddy was out here doing and everything else. But you're looking at a player who, when you're talking about quote unquote faces of the NBA and having, characters with like substance and everything else and having a little texture, I think that's the part of it. The Reggie Miller choke thing, even though it's a little dated, people can kind of relate to it. And even if you don't like him, I think it's good for the NBA to have somebody who you have an opinion about.
There you go. That was Vinny Goodwill on with Robbie and Joe this morning. Let me just say this. I don't know how much of the finals I'm going to watch. I don't know how much I care. I am rooting for Indiana. And I am rooting it for Indiana for one reason. Because Tyrese Haliburton was voted the most overrated player by the NBA players, and he has gone off and put a foot up everybody's ass in these NBA playoffs. He put a foot up Giannis and Milwaukee in the first round. He put a foot up Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Cleveland in the second round, and he put a foot up Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks in the third round. Got that coach fired. So I'm just going to root for him to win the final so that every time someone says, you didn't play the game, you don't know, I'm going to say the NBA players voted Tyrese Haliburton the most overrated player in the game, and he went and single-handedly took his team to the finals and won them if they win. So that's who I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for Indiana, kind of out of spite. Out of spite for these NBA players to stop lecturing me about everything, especially basketball. Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. Mike wants to weigh in. Okay, Mike said on the thing, see, this is what I hate. Because people, it feels like they want to go to war when it comes to talking about basketball. And then all of a sudden, it's like you try to pick them up and their phones don't work or whatever it may be. One texter into the text line says, I don't give a damn about what the national sports stations are talking about. Give me Tennessee sports all day. I wish you would cover the Grizzlies more. Now, I will say this about the Grizzlies. It's really hard for me to talk about it because nobody cares. And I'm sure there's a couple of you out there that care, but a couple years ago, before Ja Morant went Ja Morant, when Ja Morant was likable, I watched like 2 Grizzlies games. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. I'm like, this guy, it's just the athleticism, just the way that he moves his body, the way that he plays, the way that he, like, there is something special about this guy. And I remember there was one game where he had a crazy dunk and a crazy shot, and he had something like 60 points or 40 points and a triple-double. And I did the whole show being like, if this guy is the next Kobe, then I think people in Nashville will care. Crickets. Crickets on the phone lines. Crickets on the text line. I sit here today and say, Jeffrey Simmons tweeted the thumbs up emoji and we'll have loaded phones. So when you tell me like, oh man, I wish people talk more about the Grizzlies, I'm like, get more people to care about the Grizzlies. And I think Ja Morant, doing what he's done has become a distraction for the team. And quite frankly, they haven't won enough in the playoffs. Basketball is a go win in the playoff sport. And whether that's fair or not, I think it bothers guys like Charles Barkley that didn't win in the playoffs, that everybody talks about how many titles you won or things like that. But again, for whatever reason, this modern era of basketball, which really became popular with Magic and Bird, when they put the emphasis on champions defining your success, because nobody's ever really looked at baseball and said, well, Hank Aaron had 1 World Series title and Babe Ruth had 10 World Series titles. So Babe Ruth's better, but we do this with basketball. And it's not so much about the defense of Michael Jordan. I believe it was really the attack of Michael Jordan. Because if you'll remember, it was Larry and Magic, and then in came Jordan. And Jordan really popped in '84 at the Olympics. Then he gets drafted. Then early in his career, he plays Boston in a 5-game series and is dropping 60 points a night. And it's like, holy crap. I think Larry Bird, the quote that he had was, that wasn't Michael Jordan. That was God disguised as Michael Jordan. And then I think there were a lot of people that were like, hey, this Jordan, he might be better than Larry and Magic. And there were people out there that were like, oh, how dare you say he might be better than Larry Bird or Magic Johnson? And so the attack on Michael Jordan for a long time was Larry Bird and Magic Johnson win championships and Michael Jordan wins scoring titles. That was the attack on Michael Jordan. Well, then Michael Jordan won 6 titles. And now the defense of Jordan is about the titles. But that's what basketball is about. So until the Grizzlies start to look like a team that's either going to win a title or does win a title, I just don't see it mattering here to the people of Nashville. I mean, I never go anywhere, and I mean this in total sincerity, and I never go anywhere where someone's like, hey, what do you think about what went down with the Grizzlies today? Never. Unless John Morant's getting suspended for brandishing guns on Instagram. One texter says, the reason the NBA sucks is because all they do is shoot threes and layups. It's boring to watch. The game has become too efficient. It is a boring game. And what's tough about the NBA is, like, I don't know about you guys, because I used to love basketball. Like, I used to love Jordan back in the day. And then after Jordan, TD and I think we're talking about this on the air. We were definitely talking about this off the air. Like, I was a very anti-Kobe Bryant guy. I was a very anti-Kobe Shaq Lakers. I used to root against them. I think it's because when they won their first title, they beat Portland in 7 games in the Western Conference Final, and Scottie Pippen was on Portland. And so I think as a Bulls fan and a Jordan fan, I was rooting for Scottie, and that's why I was against Kobe and Shaq. And from that moment on, I always was rooting against Kobe and Shaq. Those games they used to play against Sacramento with Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and Mike Bibby and Doug Christie and Peja Stojakovic and Hito Turkoglu, those were wars. Now, it's a little disappointing because when you look back on it, the books were cooked in favor of the Lakers with the Tim Donaghy scandal and everything else. But, I mean, that was basketball where it was like, all right, game comes on 7 o'clock tonight. Tune in. Now, I just don't – there's not any, there's just not any juice like that anymore in the game. And even the best series in basketball, they're not wars anymore. Again, I kind of feel like basketball died a little bit. After that, LeBron James, Golden State 7-game series, with the Golden State had the record for the most wins in a regular season, and they went to 7 games, and LeBron had the block, and Kyrie had the shot. And ever since then, it just kind of feels like basketball's just been like, nah. And maybe it is all the 3-point shooting. I do not like that. I just find the games sometimes when I watch them just to be too boring. Ryan says more people care about the Grizzlies here than you think. I need some proof of that. Like, I don't feel the need to talk Grizzlies on the air because I don't think it moves the needle one way or another. What do you think, Reed? Do you think that we don't talk enough Grizzlies?
I think we just talked too much Grizzlies.
Just in the last 10 minutes?
In the last 10 minutes.
And I'll say the same thing about the Atlanta Braves. And I know we're partners with the Braves, and I love them, and I'm depressed at how crappy they are this year. And, again, Gwinnett's playing today, and Ian Anderson's pitching, and I don't usually grab the other team's roster. If you're looking at the stream, I have it in front of me. I usually don't grab the other team's roster because, who cares who's on the other team? But I wanted to see which Braves players were on this team, whatever. I don't think talking about the Braves is great for business. I think it's more Titans, Vols, Predators, SEC, and that's pretty much it. And then whatever big story happens across the country, people always have an opinion on that one way or another. 615-737-1025. Big news in the NFL. We'll hit on that next. Stillman and Company live from First Horizon Park, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
We have some breaking news rippling throughout the land of the NFL. What we've been anticipating for what feels like months now is finally going to happen. According to the NFL Network insiders, Aaron Rodgers is finally heading to Pittsburgh. Welcome into our NFL Network coverage in the NFL Network newsroom. Steve Weich, I'm Omar Reese, and one of those insiders, Tom Pelissero, is here. Tom, break it down for us. How did this happen and why now?
Well, you're right, Omar. This is something that the Steelers had been focused on for months. And as much as Aaron Rodgers mulled his options, including retirement, including potential other playing options, it had been apparent for a couple months that if he was going to play, it was going to be in Pittsburgh. So what I can tell you today is that Aaron Rodgers now plans to fly on Friday to Pittsburgh, finalize and sign his contract, and be on the field for next week's mandatory minicamp.
There you go. That was Tom Pelissero with the breaking news that Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, let me be completely transparent with everybody when it comes to Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers. We knew this was going to happen. Aaron had hinted that this was going to happen. And at the same time, the Steelers had been on record, their owner saying it's probably going to happen. So while when there's a big signing, like a big Aaron Rodgers traded here or this team signs this quarterback, it's usually when it's like real true breaking news. It's along the lines of Luka Doncic being traded to the Lakers in the middle of the night when my son woke up. You know, he was a 2-month infant at the time, and he wakes up, all throughout the night. We change him, feed him, change him, feed him, change him, feed him. He wakes up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to New Orleans for the Super Bowl the next day. And before I go back to bed, I just look at my phone and I see that, wait a minute, Luka Doncic, and I'm not even an NBA guy. You all know that. Luka Doncic just got traded for Anthony Davis. And I'm like, what? That to me is real breaking news where it's like, oh my God, can you believe it? Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Breaking news. This had been kind of expected. So it's not like I have a bunch of like takes lined up and be like, okay, how does this change the NFL? I don't have it. We've known since before the draft that Aaron was going to the Steelers. Now it's just officially official that Aaron has decided to get off his ass. I think it's no accident. Aaron didn't want to go to the OTAs, and Aaron, which, again, is more of an Aaron problem than it is anything else. You do need to learn your new players. You do need to learn a new playbook. But Aaron didn't want to go to the OTAs, so Aaron just waited until OTAs were over, and then he signed for the minicamp. And it's going to be 1 year, $20 million. Now, first of all, here's how I already know that everybody knew Aaron was signing there. The Steelers play Green Bay on Sunday Night Football. On October 26th, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, Sunday Night Football. I mean, come on now. That said, week 1 at the Jets, 1 p.m. CBS. Yeah, go ahead and move that one. I know. You've got good games. The first, go ahead, put Aaron and the Jets on so that everybody can watch it. I'm just combing through the Steelers schedule, and I'm trying to see if there are any other games that I'm like, oh my God, this has got to be prime time now. At the Chargers is already Sunday Night Football. Cincy, 1 p.m., probably move that one. It changes the one problem that I have had when it comes to the Steelers, which is I have found them very boring. Now I no longer do. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman & Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.